Chapter 7:15. Tang Tianqing didn't hold back at all because he had attacked in anger. However, Xiao Chen didn't seem to be at a disadvantage when facing his full-powered attack. This shocked Tang Tianqing for a moment. Compared to Tang Tianqing's shock, Xiao Chen didn't think so much. After facing Tang Tianqing head-on, Xiao Chen felt that Tang Tianqing was too weak. Although Tang Tianqing's cultivation was at the initial success stage of the Dao Gate realm, Xiao Chen didn't feel too much pressure from Tang Tianqing's attack. Moreover, Xiao Chen's attack just now was just a casual attack. He didn't use his tempered battle body, nor did he fully activate his 8-edged Dao Gate. However, even so, Xiao Chen was still able to withstand Tang Tianqing's attack without too much pressure. Originally, Xiao Chen had some expectations for Tang Tianqing. After all, Tang Tianqing was a direct disciple of the ancient sacred sect. He thought that Tang Tianqing should be able to give him a good fight. However, the reality was that Tang Tianqing's strength disappointed Xiao Chen. With a faint disappointment in his heart, Xiao Chen said faintly, "If your strength is only like this, then it's too boring." Xiao Chen didn't hide the disappointment in his heart. His meaning was very clear. If Tang Tianqing hadn't hidden his strength before, then Xiao Chen had already lost interest in fighting with Tang Tianqing. Facing Xiao Chen's naked disappointment, Tang Tianqing only felt that he had been greatly insulted. What did this mean? Did Xiao Chen think that he was too weak? As a direct disciple of the ancient sacred sect, Xiao Chen actually said that fighting with him was too boring. The anger in his heart suddenly rose like a volcanic eruption. Tang Tianqing stared at Xiao Chen as if his eyes were about to spit fire. Tang Tianqing gritted his teeth and said, "Xiao Chen, I want you to die." With this angry shout, Tang Tianqing directly used his killing move. A dark green flame burned on the blade of his sword. In an instant, the long sword in Tang Tianqing's hand turned into a flaming sword. Demonic flame annihilation. With an angry roar, Tang Tianqing slashed his sword at Xiao Chen. The terrifying dark green flame was like a fire dragon, fiercely attacking Xiao Chen. It was a heaven-class upper-grade martial skill. Tang Tianqing's demonic scorching kill was a heaven-class upper-grade martial skill. It could be said that this sword was Tang Tianqing's killing move. Obviously, Xiao Chen's words had angered Tang Tianqing, so he directly used his killing move. The flames that seemed to be able to incinerate everything rapidly rushed towards Xiao Chen. Everyone's expressions changed drastically at the sight of this. Although they were not directly facing Tang Tianqing, the might of Tang Tianqing's demonic flame annihilation was enough to make their scalps numb. Some of the Dao Transformation Realm and Dao King Realm martial artists couldn't help but exclaim, "I'm afraid no one in the Dao Gate realm can block this sword." Other than the geniuses at the same level as Tang Tianqing, no one in the Dao Gate realm could block this demonic flame annihilation. It was a very high evaluation. However, along with these people's exclamations, some people also realized that Xiao Chen had no intention of dodging Tang Tianqing's attack. Seeing that the demonic flame annihilation was getting closer and closer, Xiao Chen still stood on the same spot without any change in his expression. Is he not going to dodge? Could it be that Xiao Chen still wants to take Tang Tianqing's demonic flame annihilation head-on? Noticing Xiao Chen's actions, someone exclaimed in disbelief. Along with this person's words, everyone also looked at Xiao Chen. Some people were shocked, while others mocked at the same time. "I think Xiao Chen is scared out of his wits." Someone mocked after being scared out of his wits by Tang Tianqing's demonic flame annihilation. However, no matter what the crowd said, Xiao Chen still had no intention of dodging. Noticing Xiao Chen's indifference, the anger in Tang Tianqing's eyes intensified. At the same time, a ferocious look flickered in his eyes as he shouted angrily, "Xiao Chen, die." In Tang Tianqing's eyes, regardless of the reason why Xiao Chen didn't choose to dodge, the result was the same. Tang Tianqing wanted to kill Xiao Chen with a single sword strike. Under Tang Tianqing's furious roar, the demonic flame annihilation instantly engulfed Shao Chen. The terrifying flame soared into the sky. The dark green flame seemed to have turned the surroundings into hell. The demonic flame that came from hell was burning everything in front of it. Such a terrifying power was enough to destroy everything in the surroundings. However, just as Tang Tianqing's flame completely erupted, an invisible power of law descended from the sky and completely isolated the space where the two of them were fighting. It was also because of the appearance of this power of law that the surrounding people and buildings weren't affected. The dark green demonic flame burned everything, and Shao Chen's voice was also completely shrouded by the demonic flame. He couldn't see Shao Chen's current situation at all, let alone know whether he was dead or alive. After being hit by the demonic flame annihilation head-on, many of the surrounding people shook their heads and sighed. Alas, what a pity! He actually took Tang Tianqing's demonic flame annihilation head-on. Even if he doesn't die, he will definitely be seriously injured. Yeah, I really don't know what Shao Chen is thinking. Is he really scared out of his wits? Shao Chen completely ignored Tang Tianqing's demonic flame annihilation head-on. In the eyes of the crowd, this was definitely the most unwise choice. Of course, no one knew that the reason why Shao Chen didn't dodge was because Shao Chen didn't feel any danger from Tang Tianqing's demonic flame annihilation. Since Tang Tianqing's killing move wasn't dangerous to him, why should Shao Chen dodge it? No one saw that Shao Chen's body was shrouded in a golden light under the dark green flames. This was the tempered battle body. His entire body wasn't hurt by the demonic flame annihilation at all. Not to mention his hands, even the corners of his clothes weren't burned at all. It could be said that he wasn't hurt at all, standing in the flames of the demonic flame annihilation. Shao Chen said disappointedly. Is this the ancient saint sect's pro-disciple? He's really weak. Shao Chen sighed at Tang Tianqing's weakness from the bottom of his heart. He originally thought that Tang Tianqing, who was a pro-disciple of the ancient saint sect, would at least be able to make him fight with all his might. But now, it seemed that Tang Tianqing didn't just let him down. He had completely overestimated him. In the face of Shao Chen's sigh, Shao Xing's unfriendly voice sounded. You brat, do you think the 8-edged Dao Gate is an ordinary thing? Tang Tianqing's Dao Gate should be at the 5-edge level, while yours is at the 8-edge level. The difference in cultivation between the two of you isn't that big. Your 8-edged Dao Gate is more than enough to crush him. Moreover, don't forget that you refined the heavenly spiritual pool to break through to the Dao Gate realm. You can completely crush this brat in any aspect. How can he threaten you this time? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. End of chapter. Chapter 7:16. You little brat, do you really think that the octagonal Dao Gate is a piece of trash? Since it's the highest level of Dao Gate, it naturally has its heaven-defying aspects. If it has to spend so much effort to deal with a mere pentagonal Dao Gate, then the octagonal Dao Gate would be too trashy, Shao Xing said snappily in the face of Shao Chen's lament. Ever since he had fought with Tang Tianqing, Shao Chen had always felt that Tang Tianqing had disappointed him too much. However, Shao Chen didn't know that it wasn't that Tang Tianqing was too weak, but that Shao Chen was too strong. Firstly, the difference in cultivation between the two of them wasn't that great. Tang Tianqing was in the Dao Gate realm, so Shao Chen's cultivation was only a small realm higher than Shao Chen's. On the other hand, Shao Chen possessed the octagonal Dao Gate, the tempered battle body, and the 20% of the heaven spiritual pool that he had refined. It could be said that Shao Chen's strength had improved tremendously compared to a month ago. As for how terrifying this improvement was, Shao Chen knew that he still hadn't adapted to the improvement in his strength over the past month. Deep in his heart, Shao Chen still felt that a personal disciple like Tang Tianqing was an opponent worthy of being treated seriously. However, he didn't know that after this great opportunity, personal disciples were no longer worthy of being treated as opponents by Shao Chen. Now, Xiao Chen truly had the qualifications to covet the lofty position of chosen saint. Right now, Xiao Chen was like a person who had been poor all his life and suddenly received a huge amount of wealth. However, deep in his heart, he still couldn't adapt and honestly felt that he was still a poor person. Of course, this wasn't Xiao Chen's fault. This was because Xiao Chen's improvement this time was too great, and the time was too short. It had only been a little over a month, so it was understandable that he hadn't adapted to the increase in his strength yet. After hearing Xiao Xing's scolding, Xiao Chen also laughed self-deprecatingly. Yeah, why should I limit my sights to personal disciples? I've already decided to strive for the position of chosen saint. Tang Tianqing wasn't wrong. What was wrong was that Xiao Chen had too high of an expectation for him. What was wrong was that Xiao Chen had placed too much importance on Tang Tianqing. Now, Xiao Chen didn't need to set his sights on personal disciples. Instead, he needed to look at a higher level, those chosen saints and prospective chosen saints. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Xiao Xing smiled and said, "That's more like it. With your current strength, if you still want to bicker with the personal disciples, wouldn't you be bullying the weak if word got out? Go to the ancient sacred sect. For the time being, you are not qualified to be the son of saint, but you already have the strength to compete with the prospective son of saint. Get the position of the prospective son of saint first. As for the personal disciples, they are in front of you and you don't need to worry too much." In the depths of the raging fire, Xiao Chen and Xiao Xing chatted casually as if they were having a casual conversation. After they finished speaking, Xiao Chen locked his eyes on the raging fire that enveloped him. Just as Xiao Chen completely lost interest in entangling with Tang Tianqing, more than 100 breaths had passed in the outside world. However, Xiao Chen, who was enveloped by the demonic flames, still didn't move. Just when everyone thought that Xiao Chen had been burned to death, there was suddenly a movement in the demonic flames. "Humph, you're really lucky to be killed by my demonic flames," Tang Tianqing said faintly as he looked at the dark green flames in front of him. Just as he finished speaking, the demonic flames suddenly went berserk, as though they were being forcefully extinguished by some force. The demonic flames, which were originally monstrous, actually began to slowly dissipate at this moment. Furthermore, from the center of the demonic flames, the flames actually opened up a path. Looking along these separated demonic flames, one could clearly see that Xiao Chen, who was originally engulfed by the demonic flames, actually walked out slowly at this moment, unharmed. After being trapped in the demonic flames for more than 100 breaths, Xiao Chen's clothes didn't even have a trace of being burned, let alone being injured. Xiao Chen walked out of the demonic flames unscathed. As soon as Xiao Chen walked out of the encirclement of the demonic flames, the monstrous demonic flames quickly dissipated. They had been forcibly suppressed by Xiao Chen's terrifying spiritual power. Xiao Chen appeared in front of everyone again, but this time, the expressions on everyone's faces could be said to be extremely interesting when they saw him, especially Tang Tianqing. At this moment, he was already muttering to himself as if he had seen a ghost. "How is this possible? How can you be fine? How can my demonic flames' annihilation be useless?" Tang Tianqing couldn't believe the scene in front of him. In response, Xiao Chen said indifferently, "Nothing is impossible. I can only say that you're too weak. All right, I'm no longer interested in playing with you. Now, do you want to scram by yourself, or do you want me to do it?" Xiao Chen's tone was extremely indifferent. Hearing this, Tang Tianqing was stunned for a moment, then a sense of shame and indignation arose in his heart. He was completely humiliated by Xiao Chen. Driven by this sense of shame and indignation, Tang Tianqing recklessly attacked Xiao Chen. "Xiao Chen, I'll kill you." As if he had lost his mind, Tang Tianqing only felt that he had been repeatedly humiliated by Xiao Chen today. How could the proud Tang Tianqing endure this? He didn't care about anything else. He just wanted to kill Xiao Chen with his own hands. Looking at Tang Tianqing rushing towards him, Xiao Chen slowly pointed his finger with an indifferent expression. He directly displayed the Chun Jun sword finger. A golden sword ray flashed and instantly hit Tang Tianqing's right hand that was holding the sword. He felt a burst of pain and the sword in his hand fell to the ground. Xiao Chen knocked away Tang Tianqing's sword with one finger. At the same time, he took a step forward and appeared in front of Tang Tianqing in an instant. He grabbed Tang Tianqing's neck and lifted him up. Tang Tianqing was lifted up like a chick in Xiao Chen's hand. No matter how hard Tang Tianqing struggled, he couldn't break free from Xiao Chen's grasp. Looking at this scene, everyone present was dumbfounded. What's going on? What happened to the fierce battle? What happened to the battle between the personal disciples? How did Tang Tianqing get subdued by Xiao Chen in the blink of an eye? From the moment Xiao Chen appeared to subdue Tang Tianqing, he only used two moves. Facing Xiao Chen, Tang Tianqing simply couldn't retaliate at all. Everyone was shocked. But apart from them, there was another person who was also filled with shock. And that person was Saint Kuangli, who had been hiding in the dark. Saint Kuangli had been secretly watching the development of the situation. At this moment, he hid in the void and looked at Xiao Chen below with eyes full of astonishment. Tang Tianqing was a personal disciple of the ancient sage sect, but in the hands of Xiao Chen, he was pressed to the ground like an ant and repeatedly rubbed against him. This simply shocked Saint Kuangli to the core. After recovering from the shock, Saint Kuangli seemed to have thought of something all of a sudden. A glint flashed in his eyes and he muttered to himself. Tang Tianqing condensed the Pentagate and Xiao Chen can crush Tang Tianqing. In that case, the Tao Gate condensed by Xiao Chen, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 717. From the beginning to the end, Saint Kuangli had been paying attention to the battle between Xiao Chen and Tang Tianqing. After all, whether it was Xiao Chen or Tang Tianqing, Saint Kuangli obviously didn't want anything to happen to them. Needless to say, Tang Tianqing was a direct disciple of the ancient saint sect, so Saint Kuangli naturally had to protect him. As for Xiao Chen, he naturally couldn't leave him alone because he had already caught the attention of the higher-ups of the ancient saint sect. In addition, the cause of the whole incident was Xiao Chen killing Tang Tianbao. To put it bluntly, in Saint Kuangli's opinion, no matter how strong Xiao Chen was, killing Tang Tianbao was nothing at all. Originally, Saint Kuangli was about to appear and mediate between the two when the battle was about to end. However, the result of the battle was far beyond his expectations. He already knew that Xiao Chen had broken through to the Tao Gate realm. Regarding this, Saint Kuangli was indeed a little surprised. Even so, from the beginning to the end, Saint Kuangli felt that even if Xiao Chen could defeat Tang Tianqing, it wouldn't be too easy. Firstly, Xiao Chen had just broken through to the Tao Gate realm. Secondly, Tang Tianqing was a direct disciple of the ancient saint sect. His battle strength wouldn't be too bad. That's right, unlike others, Saint Kuangli was optimistic about Xiao Chen from the beginning. However, in his opinion, even if Xiao Chen won, it would be very difficult. He had always held this thought, but who would have thought that Xiao Chen would be so relaxed when facing Tang Tianqing? From the beginning to the end, Xiao Chen seemed to be playing around, suppressing Tang Tianqing so easily that he couldn't turn the situation around. Looking at the scene in front of him, Saint Kuangli also had a bold guess in his heart. The strength of a Tao Gate realm cultivator, regardless of cultivation, was the most important factor. Tang Tianqing, on the other hand, had conjured a pentagonal gate of the way. Xiao Chen was able to suppress Tang Tianqing so easily despite being one level lower than Tang Tianqing. What level would Xiao Chen's gate of the way be? At the very least, one had to be at the level of the six-edged Tao Gate to be able to suppress Tang Tianqing so easily. As he thought like this in his heart, Saint Kuangli sighed in his heart. However, at the same time, when they saw Tang Tianqing being captured with ease by Xiao Qin, the expressions of the 4 elders of the Tang clan who'd come with him immediately changed, and the Dao Emperor Realm Elder in the lead even shouted furiously. Xiao Qin, if you dare to hurt young Master Tianqing, the Tang family will tear you into pieces. Tang Tianbao had already been killed by Xiao Qin. If anything happened to Tang Tianqing, Tang Meng would probably go crazy. That was why the 4 elders were so nervous. However, Xiao Qin did not care about the threats of the 4 Tang family elders. He glanced at Tang Tianqing, who was in his hands like a dead dog. Xiao Qin said indifferently, "Dismember him into 1,000 pieces? Your Tang clan can give it a try, but I guarantee that this piece of trash will definitely be a step ahead of me before I die." Tang Tianqing's life was in his hands now, so Xiao Qin really didn't believe that the Tang clan would dare to fight to the death. Moreover, Xiao Qin firmly believed that Saint Kuangli would definitely not sit by idly. With so many layers of insurance, Xiao Qin didn't care at all even if he was facing 4 elders of the Tang clan. The 4 elders of the Tang clan were livid when they heard Xiao Qin, but they didn't dare move at all. What a joke! So long as Xiao Qin exerted a little force, Tang Tianqing's neck would be broken. They were Dao kings and Dao emperors, but they didn't dare guarantee that they would be able to save Tang Tianqing in such a short period of time. The battle ended as quickly as it started. Moreover, to everyone's surprise, what was supposed to be a shocking battle had completely turned into a one-sided crushing. That's right, it was a one-sided crushing. Xiao Qin had completely crushed Tang Tianqing. No one attacked again. Xiao Qin and the 4 elders of the Tang clan faced each other with swords drawn. It was also at this moment that Saint Kuang Li's figure slowly appeared in the sky. He looked at the 4 elders of the Tang clan and snorted coldly. "Humph, does your Tang clan really not put me in your eyes? You actually dared to start a battle in Wind Suppression City." As soon as Saint Kuangli appeared, the first thing he said was to berate the Tang clan. Even though the 4 elders of the Tang clan were displeased, they naturally didn't dare to show it. They all bowed respectfully and admitted their mistake. Saint Kuangli ignored the 4 elders of the Tang clan and landed directly in front of Xiao Qin. His words just now were just to express his attitude. He didn't appear for the Tang clan, but for Xiao Qin. Arriving in front of Xiao Qin, Saint Kuangli smiled and said amiably, "Boy, let him go. Don't worry. With me here, the Tang clan won't cause trouble for you in the future." Hearing Saint Kuangli's words, Xiao Qin didn't say anything. He casually threw Tang Tianqing to the side. Seeing this, the 4 elders of the Tang clan immediately stepped forward to check on Tang Tianqing's condition and then fed him healing pills. At this moment, be it Xiao Qin or Saint Kuangli, neither of them paid any attention to Tang Tianqing. However, Xiao Qin didn't expect Saint Kuangli to tap on Xiao Qin's forehead without any warning. It was apparent that Saint Kuangli was checking on Xiao Qin's body. Or perhaps, he was checking on Xiao Qin's Dao Gate. Saint Kuangli's sudden action startled Xiao Qin. He wasn't afraid that the 8-edged Dao Gate would be exposed. After all, Xiao Qin had no intention of hiding it. Xiao Qin was afraid of Xiao Qin. After all, Xiao Xing was in his body right now. If Saint Kuangli were to find out, who knew what would happen? However, Xiao Qin had apparently underestimated Xiao Xing. Under Saint Kuangli's investigation, he didn't detect Xiao Xing's presence. Xiao Xing wasn't exposed. At this moment, Saint Kuangli didn't have the time to care about this. Looking into Xiao Qin's body, Saint Kuangli's expression became incomparably interesting. Saint Kuangli initially guessed that Xiao Qin's Dao Gate should be at the 6-edge or 7-edge level. But the truth was that Saint Kuangli found it hard to accept. Xiao Qin's Dao Gate wasn't at the 6-edge or 7-edge level. Instead, it was the highest level, the 8-edge Dao Gate. The 8-edge Dao Gate was considered one of the best in the ancient sacred sect. One had to know that among the ancient sacred sect's holy sons, only one of them had condensed the 8-edge Dao Gate. The rest of the holy sons were still at the seven-edge level. Saint Kuang Li thought that he had overestimated Xiao Chen. But in fact, he had underestimated Xiao Chen's talent. While Saint Kuang Li was in shock, Tang Tianqing, who had woken up, bellowed furiously. Xiao Chen, I'm a personal disciple of the ancient sacred sect. If you dare to hurt me, the ancient sacred sect won't let you off. Sir Saint will definitely seek justice for me. Yesterday, the last chapter's title was wrong and couldn't be changed, but the main text didn't have any problems. I'm sorry, brothers, please forgive me. These 2 days, I've already been on a drip for 3 days in a row. It's really uncomfortable. Windlass will adjust his state as soon as possible. I'll make up for the 2 chapters that I owe before. When I'm better, I'll erupt again. Chapter 7:18. Tang Tianqing, who had just woken up, shouted angrily. However, his words sounded ridiculous, especially in the ears of Saint Kuang Li. Tang Tianqing was a direct disciple of the ancient saint sect, so he didn't put Xiao Chen in his eyes at all. However, he didn't know that Xiao Chen was a treasure in the eyes of Saint Kuang Li. What kind of concept was the octagonal Dao Gate? If there were no accidents, Xiao Chen would definitely become the holy son of the ancient saint sect in the future. Moreover, as long as Xiao Chen went to the ancient saint sect, he would definitely become the holy son. Even an idiot would be able to see the difference between a direct disciple and a holy son. It was ridiculous that Tang Tianqing was still shouting at the side. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that even if Xiao Chen killed Tang Tianqing, the ancient saint sect wouldn't say anything. Not to mention that the ancient saint sect had rules. That was bullshit. If a holy son killed a direct disciple, would the ancient saint sect execute him? Obviously, this was impossible. Rules were useless to some people, especially in the world of martial artists. This point was even more incisively and vividly displayed. In the face of Tang Tianqing's angry rebuke, Saint Kuang Li immediately shouted angrily, "Shut up." Saint Kuang Li was a saint of the ancient saint sect. Tang Tianqing's voice came to an abrupt halt, and he looked at Saint Kuang Li in confusion. Tang Tianqing was a direct disciple of the ancient saint sect, while Xiao Chen was only a direct disciple of Tianfeng Xingzong. However, why was Saint Kuang Li so protective of Xiao Chen? Since Saint Kuang Li appeared, he hadn't even looked at Tang Tianqing. Instead, he was extremely concerned about Xiao Chen. Why was he, Tang Tianqing, the direct disciple of the ancient saint sect? He did not understand why Saint Kuang Li was so protective of Xiao Chen. However, what surprised Tang Tianqing even more was that after a moment of shock, Saint Kuang Li calmed down and smiled at Xiao Chen. Then he turned to Tang Tianqing and the 4 elders of the Tang family. You should be glad that nothing happened to Xiao Chen today. If Xiao Chen had lost a single strand of hair today, then your entire Tang family would be buried together with him. His voice was calm but extremely cold. Hearing this, Tang Tianqing was stunned, and so were the 4 elders of the Tang family. What did that mean? Saint Kuang Li is on Xiao Chen's side? How was this possible? The expressions of everyone from the Tang clan changed drastically. However, Saint Kuang Li paid no attention to their expressions at all. He gazed into the distance and shouted in a deep voice, "Tang Meng, how long are you going to watch? Do you really think that I don't dare to go to your Tang family?" Saint Kuang Li was not the only one who had been hiding in the dark. The head of the Tang family, Tang Tianqing's father, Tang Meng, had also been hiding in the dark. After all, Tang Tianqing was Tang Meng's only son. Naturally, Tang Meng was worried about him, so he had come personally just in case. Following Saint Kuang Li's angry shout, Tang Meng's figure slowly appeared in the sky. Although he was a sage-to-be expert, Tang Meng's attitude towards Saint Kuang Li was extremely respectful. He saluted Saint Kuang Li and called out, "Saint Kuang Li. Humph, I don't care what the reason is between your Tang family and Xiao Chen. Stop it now," Saint Kuang Li said directly. Hearing this, Tang Tianqing was stunned. What was going on? How could Saint Kuang Li ask the Tang family to give up? Moreover, he didn't ask for the reason. It could even be said that he was being unreasonable. Tang Tianqing was puzzled and extremely unwilling at the same time. However, Tang Meng's face suddenly sank when he heard Saint Kuang Li's words. This was because at the same time, a voice transmission floated into Tang Meng's ears. Needless to say, this voice transmission was from Saint Kuang Li. Xiao Chun will soon be promoted to the quasi-holy son of the ancient saint sect. Tang Meng, I think you should know the consequences of opposing a quasi-holy son. At that time, let alone Tang Tianqing's life in the ancient saint sect, it's hard to say whether your Tang family can survive. You should consider it carefully. Xiao Qin will soon be promoted to the quasi-holy son of the ancient saint sect? Tang Meng was stunned by Saint Kuang Li's words. He naturally knew the consequences of opposing a quasi-holy son. If Xiao Qin really became the quasi-holy son of the ancient saint sect, then it would be extremely easy for him to secretly kill Tang Tianqing in the ancient saint sect. After all, the quasi-holy son had real power in the ancient saint sect, just like the holy sons. Of course, his power wouldn't be as great as the holy sons. He kindly reminded Tang Meng. After a moment of silence, Tang Meng naturally knew what to do. She immediately came before Xiao Qin and respectfully apologized to him. It had to be said that Tang Meng was a flexible person. To be able to sit in the position of patriarch of the Tang family, he naturally wasn't an idiot. He knew when to submit and when to be unyielding. Since Tang Meng had admitted his mistake, the matter naturally came to an end. Whether Tang Tianqing was willing or not, at the very least, the Tang family wouldn't provoke Xiao Qin in the future. At the same time, Tang Meng would definitely repeatedly warn Tang Tianqing not to deal with Xiao Qin. Xiao Qin didn't care about Tang Meng's apology at all. Right now, Xiao Qin only wanted to enter the ancient saint sect. Saint Kuang Li already knew that he had condensed the octagonal Dao Gate, so he probably didn't need to go through Tianfeng Xingzong. After all, from the looks of it, Saint Kuang Li couldn't wait to bring him back to the ancient saint sect. This was a good thing for Xiao Qin. However, before going to the ancient saint sect, Xiao Qin still planned to make a trip to Tianfeng Xingzong. After all, Mu Feng and the others were still there, so it was only right for him to say goodbye. Just as Xiao Qin was thinking about this, Saint Kuang Li had already ordered Tang Meng and the others to leave. At this moment, Saint Kuang Li turned around and smiled at Xiao Qin. Haha, little guy, you really surprised this seat. Let's go, this seat will take you back to the ancient saint sect now. Just as Xiao Qin thought, Saint Kuang Li planned to take Xiao Qin back to the ancient saint sect as soon as possible. After all, the octagonal Dao Gate was a genius among geniuses. Xiao Qin naturally wouldn't refuse Saint Kuang Li's words. However, he still replied truthfully. Senior, disciple wants to go back to Tianfeng Xingzong first before heading to the ancient saint sect. Facing Saint Kuang Li, Xiao Qin slowly replied. Hearing this, everyone's jaws dropped. As for Saint Kuang Li, he actually didn't get angry, nor did he refuse. Instead, he happily agreed. Not only did he agree to Xiao Qin's request, but he even planned to personally accompany Xiao Qin to Tianfeng Xingzong. Haha, no problem, no problem. This seat happens to be free, so I'll accompany you to Tianfeng Xingzong. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 719. Saint Kuang Li was obviously lying when he said that he was fine. As a saint and the city lord of suppressing Wind City, how could Saint Kuang Li be fine? Why would he accompany Xiao Qin to Tianfeng Xingzong? Saint Kuang Li did this to protect Xiao Qin and safely escort him to the ancient sacred sect. This showed how much he valued Xiao Qin. Without waiting for Xiao Qin to reply, Saint Kuang Li laughed and led Xiao Qin into the teleportation array. In fact, Xiao Qin originally wanted to tell Saint Kuang Li that he would go to the ancient sacred sect after dealing with the matters in Tianfeng Xingzong. Who would have thought that Saint Kuang Li would be so overbearing and insist on personally escorting him to the ancient sacred sect? Under Saint Kuang Li's lead, Shao Chen and Saint Kuang Li's figures quickly disappeared into the teleportation array. Seeing this scene, the surrounding cultivators couldn't help but exclaim, "Am I seeing this right?" Saint Kuang Li actually personally escorted Shao Chen to Tianfeng Xingzong? This. Clearly, everyone was also shocked by Saint Kuang Li's actions. How much did he value Shao Chen to personally accompany him to Tianfeng Xingzong? The development of the matter was beyond everyone's expectations. Of course, it wouldn't be long before everyone present knew the answer. When Shao Chen became the quasi-holy son of the ancient sacred sect, through the teleportation array, Shao Chen and Saint Kuang Li arrived at Tianfeng Xingzong in the blink of an eye. When they walked out of the teleportation array, the Tianfeng Xingzong elder who was in charge of guarding the teleportation array thought that it was only the disciples who had returned, but when he looked up, he saw Shao Chen and Saint Kuang Li. Recognizing Saint Kuang Li at a glance, the elder shuddered and hurriedly got up before Saint Kuang Li. He respectfully said, "Lord Saint Kuang Li, what brings you here?" Saint Kuang Li's sudden appearance at Saint Tianfeng's place was naturally very strange. However, Saint Kuang Li didn't mind it at all. He waved his hand and smiled. "Haha, I'm just taking a stroll. You don't have to worry about me. I'm going to find Brother Tianfeng for a drink." Saint Kuang Li didn't tell anyone about Shao Chen. As soon as he finished speaking, he looked at Shao Chen and smiled. "Kid, you can go by yourself. When you're done, come find me at Brother Tianfeng's place." Since they had already arrived at Tianfeng Xingzong, it was clearly inappropriate for Saint Kuang Li to follow Shao Chen. Moreover, Shao Chen probably didn't want a saint by his side all the time. In addition, there wouldn't be any problems in Tianfeng Xingzong, so Saint Kuang Li prepared to leave and find Saint Tianfeng. Hearing Saint Kuang Li's words, Shao Chen respectfully nodded and saw him off. After Saint Kuang Li left, Shao Chen stepped out of the teleportation array and walked back to his residence. This time, he came back mainly to say goodbye to Mu Feng, Wang Feng, Wang Zong, and a few other people he was familiar with. Since he was going to the ancient sacred sect, he naturally had to let them know. After returning to Tianfeng Xingzong for a little more than 2 months, Shao Chen actually felt that things were still the same, but people had changed. Yes, 2 months ago, his strength was only at the level of one of the top 10 direct disciples. But now, it was no exaggeration to say that even Wang Zong was probably no match for Shao Chen. And all of this was thanks to Shao Xing. It could be said that with Shao Xing by his side, Shao Chen's martial path was like adding wings to a tiger. At the same time, Saint Kuang Li appeared at the top of Tianfeng Mountain in Saint Tianfeng's residence. As soon as he saw Saint Tianfeng sitting cross-legged at the top of the mountain, Saint Kuang Li's rough voice rang out. "Haha, Brother Tianfeng, great news." Saint Kuang Li's character was incomparably bold. Hearing this, Saint Tianfeng slowly opened his eyes and said unhappily, "Why didn't you guard Jinfeng City? Why did you come to Tianfeng Xingzong?" "Haha, isn't it because of great news? Brother Tianfeng, Shao Chen has broken through to the Dao Gate realm." Saint Kuang Li replied. "Oh? Shao Chen has broken through to the Dao Gate realm?" "Yes, and do you know what level the Dao Gate that kid condensed is?" Saint Kuang Li said excitedly. Saint Tianfeng shook his head slightly, indicating that he didn't know. Seeing this, Saint Kuang Li's eyes lit up and he laughed. "Haha, let me tell you, Shao Chen has condensed an octagonal Dao Gate." Octagonal Dao Gate. Hearing this, even Saint Tianfeng revealed a strange expression. Obviously, he didn't expect Shao Chen to be able to condense an octagonal Dao Gate. In addition to being shocked, Saint Tianfeng also asked suspiciously, "Are you sure?" "Of course, I've personally checked it. It's indeed an octagonal Dao Gate." Now that he was sure that Shao Chen had condensed an octagonal Dao Gate, Saint Tianfeng said indifferently, So you plan to bring him to the ancient saint sect? That's right. That kid already has the cultivation of the Tao Gate realm and has even condensed the 8-edged Tao Gate. It's only natural for him to go to the ancient sacred sect. After all, becoming the quasi-holy son will bring him great benefit. Saint Tianfeng didn't hide anything from Saint Tianfeng. Saint Tianfeng didn't object to this and only sighed. The octagonal Tao Gate is indeed not bad, but Xiao Chen's cultivation is still a bit low. Can he pass the prospective saint's test? If he's given another year or two, it'll probably be safer, right? If one wanted to become a prospective holy son of the ancient saint sect, it wasn't something that could be done just by having enough talent. One had to go through a test. Furthermore, the difficulty of the test wasn't low at all. After all, the ancient saint sect didn't wish for their prospective holy son to be an empty shell with nothing but talent. According to the normal process, Xiao Chen should wait another 2 years. At that time, his cultivation would have increased, and passing the prospective saint's test wouldn't be a problem. However, it was indeed a bit too rushed right now. Saint Kuangli laughed heartily when he heard Saint Tianfeng's words. Haha, it's fine, it's fine. This kid will go to the ancient saint sect no matter what. It's good to let him get used to it first. He'll become the prospective saint in a year or 2 anyway. The two saints discussed Xiao Chen. At the same time, Xiao Chen returned to his residence. As soon as he entered, he saw that his 4 women were all bruised and battered. Clearly, they had just been beaten up. Their originally beautiful faces were now incomparably miserable because of their injuries. Seeing this scene, Xiao Chen's mood immediately turned bad and his face sank. Who did this? These injuries were definitely caused by someone. Faced with Xiao Chen's question, the 4 maids originally didn't want to say anything. However, they couldn't withstand Xiao Chen's interrogation and finally told Xiao Chen that it was Yiting. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 720. It turned out that not long after Xiao Chen went to Zhenfeng City, Yiting returned to the sect. After learning that Xiao Chen had killed He Chushuan, Yiting was burning with rage. He was even prepared to kill Xiao Chen in Zhenfeng City. Unfortunately, Zhenfeng City was under martial law at that time due to the wind ghost's attack, so Yiting had no way to enter. Since he couldn't do anything to Xiao Chen, Yiting naturally shifted his anger to others. The disciples of the Tianqi sect and those related to Xiao Chen, including Xiao Chen's 4 maids, all suffered Yiting's revenge. Dozens of Tianqi sect disciples were even killed by Yiting. Seeing that Yiting was planning to kill everyone related to Xiao Chen at all costs, Wang Zong finally stepped in and made Yiting calm down a little. Of course, it was impossible for Wang Zong to protect the disciples of the Tianqi sect all the time. Therefore, for the past 2 months, the disciples of the Tianqi sect had been living extremely miserably in Tianfeng Xingzong. After telling Xiao Chen all of these things, the 4 girls still had worried expressions on their faces when they were done. Senior brother Xiao Chen, we're fine. Don't be impulsive. That's right. Senior brother Xiao Chen, don't be impulsive. As the saying goes, it's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge 10 years later. It's never too late to deal with Yiting when senior brother's cultivation is successful in the future. The 4 girls were afraid that Xiao Chen would impulsively look for Yiting now, so they tried to persuade him. After all, Yiting was the 3rd personal disciple and was very strong. Of course, the 4 girls didn't know that Yiting was in the past. The current Xiao Chen was even stronger than him. If it was 2 months ago, Xiao Chen might have been a little afraid of Yiting. But now, Yiting was simply a clown. He might even be inferior to Tang Tianqing. With a sneer on his face, Xiao Chen said indifferently, "Isn't it never too late for a gentleman to take revenge 10 years later? Unfortunately, I'm not a gentleman. What I believe in is that revenge is never too late." After saying that, Xiao Chen didn't care about the 4 girls' persuasion and directly soared into the air. Seeing this, the four girls anxiously stood in the courtyard and stamped their feet. Standing in the air, Xiao Qin locked his eyes on Yi Ting's residence. Then, he pointed his finger and directly displayed the dragon's spring sword finger. A dragon shadow dragon roared and rushed toward Yi Ting's residence. A dragon's roar resounded. And a dragon image. A dragon roar. Such a huge commotion naturally attracted the attention of many people. The direct disciples and the core disciples nearby all turned their gazes to the sky. When they saw Xiao Chen's figure, everyone had a strange expression on their faces as they whispered softly. This Xiao Chen is back? Residence 2 destroyed. It's over. Is there going to be an all-out war? Over the past 2 months, Yi Ting has been madly retaliating against Xiao Chen. Now, as soon as Xiao Chen came back, he directly destroyed Yi Ting's house. This is really going to be an all-out war. Almost everyone knew that Yi Ting had been madly retaliating against Xiao Chen over the past 2 months. Now, Xiao Chen's actions were obviously in response to Yi Ting's actions. Faced with such a situation, the expressions of many disciples changed greatly. Was there going to be a war between the two direct disciples? Everyone was amazed, but most people were not optimistic about Xiao Chen. After all, Xiao Chen was ranked last among the top 10 direct disciples, while Yi Ting was ranked third. No matter how they looked at it, Yi Ting had a higher chance of winning. It could even be said that Xiao Chen had almost no chance of winning. However, what everyone did not expect was that after destroying Yi Ting's house with one finger, Xiao Chen's voice sounded. Under the spread of spiritual power, it almost spread throughout Tianfeng Xingzong. Yi Ting, get out here. As soon as Xiao Chen's words came out, everyone's jaws dropped. Whether it was the direct disciples, core disciples, or ordinary disciples, their expressions changed dramatically. Everyone thought that Xiao Chen was crazy, but only Xiao Chen knew that he was not crazy. He wanted to kill someone. Since entering Tianfeng Xingzong, Xiao Chen and the Iron Sword sect had been entangled with each other for several years. During this period, both sides had used various means. After being entangled for so long, coupled with Yi Ting's actions this time, Xiao Chen decided that he might as well settle it once and for all today. Therefore, Xiao Chen wanted to kill Yi Ting in front of many Tianfeng Xingzong disciples today. At this moment, Xiao Chen was incomparably domineering. He stood in the air, his black hair fluttering in the wind. As soon as Xiao Chen's voice fell, a terrifying spiritual power fluctuation soared into the sky. Then, Yi Ting, who was wearing a Tianfeng robe, appeared in front of Xiao Chen without anyone noticing. Yi Ting's eyes flashed with anger. Previously, Yi Ting was not in his house. Now that he saw Xiao Chen destroy his house and shamelessly ask him to get out, the killing intent in Yi Ting's heart rose to the extreme. The two stood facing each other, and the atmosphere instantly became tense. Facing Yi Ting, Xiao Chen finally saw through his cultivation. He was at the peak of the Dao validation realm. It was not Yi Ting's cultivation. At the same time, Yi Ting shouted coldly. Xiao Chen, there was a path to heaven, but you didn't take it. Instead, you barged into hell. I was worried that I couldn't find you, but you delivered yourself to me. Today, I want to see who can save you. Yi Ting had been looking for Xiao Chen. Now that Xiao Chen had finally shown up, Yi Ting naturally did not hide the killing intent in his heart. Hearing this, Xiao Chen sneered. There was a path to heaven, but you didn't take it. Instead, you barged into hell. Not bad, not bad. It's very suitable to describe your actions. Facing Yi Ting, Xiao Chen was fearless. Seeing this, Yi Ting was completely furious. With a roar, Yi Ting was about to attack, but at this moment a shout was heard. Stop! Along with this shout, Wang Zong's figure appeared between Xiao Chen and Yi Ting. Seeing Wang Zong's appearance, Yi Ting's face darkened. Wang Zong, you still want to stop me? During this period, Wang Zong had indeed stopped Yi Ting many times. However, in the face of Yi Ting's angry roar, Wang Zong did not pay attention to him at all. Instead, he looked at Xiao Chen as if to say, "Are you stupid? You know that Yi Ting wants to deal with you, but you delivered yourself to him." Wang Zong was a little speechless at Xiao Chen's action, but he still said, "Xiao Chen, you go first. I will help you stop Yi Ting. Don't do anything stupid." Wang Zong naturally did not think that Xiao Chen would be a match for Yi Ting. However, after hearing Wang Zong's words, Xiao Chen smiled slightly. "Senior brother Wang Zong, I know very well what I am doing." "You bastard, do you really know what you are doing?" Hearing this, Wang Zong anxiously scolded. Facing Wang Zong's anxiousness, Xiao Chen's smile did not diminish. "Of course today I will kill Yi Ting here. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation." Chapter 721. "Today, I'm going to kill Yi Ting," Xiao Chen said flatly. Wang Zong was stunned when he heard Xiao Chen's words. He wondered if Xiao Chen had lost his mind. Kill Yi Ting? Yi Ting's strength ranked third in Tianfeng Xingzong. Xiao Chen was no match for him. Of course, Wang Zong's understanding of Xiao Chen was still limited to 2 months ago. Moreover, even if Wang Zong knew that Xiao Chen had gone out to train for more than 2 months, he would never have thought that Xiao Chen would possess the strength to defeat Yi Ting in just 2 months. Because it was unrealistic. What could he do in 2 months? This was especially true after reaching the Dao confirmation realm. More than 2 months was just the time it took to enter seclusion. Of course, how could Wang Zong know what kind of great opportunity Xiao Chen had obtained in the past 2 months in the Wind Plain? This great opportunity was comparable to 10 years of bitter cultivation for Xiao Chen. This was the horror of opportunities. A heaven-defying opportunity was enough to make one soar to the sky. Such things were common in the world of martial artists. Wang Zong couldn't understand Xiao Chen. Yi Ting, who was standing at the side, burst into laughter after a brief moment of shock. His laughter was full of contempt. At the same time, he looked at Xiao Chen as if he was looking at an idiot. "Haha, what did you say? You want to kill me? Haha, funny, really funny. This is the funniest joke I've ever heard in my life." Yi Ting clutched his stomach and laughed. Xiao Chen said that he wanted to kill him here. This made Yi Ting so angry that he laughed. How dare an ant say that he wanted to kill him? His laughter was filled with disdain and mockery. However, before Yi Ting could finish his words, his laughter stopped abruptly. This was because Xiao Chen had appeared in front of him without him noticing. He grabbed Yi Ting by the neck and lifted him up. They didn't see how Xiao Chen moved. Yi Ting didn't see it, and neither did Wang Zong. When they came back to their senses, Xiao Chen had lifted Yi Ting up like a chicken. Yi Ting was like a duck that had been grabbed by the neck. A second ago, he was mocking Xiao Chen. Now there was only deep shock and disbelief in his eyes. Yi Ting was not the only one who was shocked. Wang Zong and the other personal disciples were shocked as well. They never thought that Xiao Chen would be able to subdue Yi Ting so easily. Yi Ting did not even have a chance to react. Under countless shocked gazes, Xiao Chen sneered and said, "Do you think it's funny? I think it's just a normal thing because if I want to kill you, it's as easy as killing an ant. Just like now." After saying that, Xiao Chen threw a punch at Yi Ting's abdomen. Yi Ting spat out a mouthful of blood from the pain. After the punch landed, Xiao Chen exclaimed softly, "You're not crippled? Not bad, but so what? If 1 punch doesn't work, then 2. If 2 punches don't work, then 3. Let's see how many punches your Dantian can take." With the previous punch, Xiao Chen was prepared to cripple Yi Ting's cultivation. However, to Xiao Chen's surprise, Yi Ting's Dantian didn't shatter under the punch. Yi Ting was indeed a personal disciple. The hardness of his Dantian couldn't be compared with that of an ordinary person. But so what? It didn't matter at all. After saying that, Xiao Chen clenched his fist again. Seeing this, Yi Ting's eyes finally showed a touch of fear. Without thinking much, he immediately struggled with all his might and shouted, "Xiao Chen, how dare you? Stop, stop." Yi Ting struggled with all his might, but it was all in vain. Xiao Chen's fist arrived as expected. With a bang, it landed on Yi Ting's abdomen again. Yi Ting spat out another mouthful of blood. However, it wasn't over yet. After the punch landed, Xiao Chen didn't stop. His fists continued to land on Yi Ting's abdomen like raindrops. Bang, bang, bang. A total of 8 punches sounded. After 8 punches in a row, Yi Ting only heard a muffled bang in his body. His dantian was directly shattered. After his dantian was forcefully blasted apart, Yi Ting's aura quickly withered. His face also instantly became as pale as paper. The numerous disciples who had witnessed the entire process by the side could not help but gulp down large mouthfuls of saliva. Crippled. Yi Ting, who ranked third among the top 10 personal disciples, was crippled by Xiao Chen just like that. It was as if they had seen a ghost. Everyone, including Wang Zong, couldn't believe the scene in front of them. How could this be? It was too exaggerated. From the beginning to the end, Yi Ting didn't even have the slightest ability to resist. Just like that, Xiao Chen used the most violent and barbaric method to destroy his dantian and cripple his cultivation. Without his cultivation, Yi Ting's aura weakened as he looked at Xiao Chen and said with difficulty, Xiao Chen, I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Yi Ting was already in the grasp of Xiao Chen like a dead dog. Hearing Yi Ting's weak voice, Xiao Chen said expressionlessly, Become a ghost? We'll talk about it when you can. After saying that, Xiao Chen waved his hand and threw Yi Ting's body into the air. Then, in front of everyone, Xiao Chen pointed his finger and used the Tai sword finger. A thick beam of spiritual energy shot out and immediately engulfed Yi Ting. Yi Ting didn't even have time to scream. When the light of the Tai sword finger dissipated, Yi Ting's body had already disappeared. Since they couldn't see Yi Ting, the crowd naturally didn't think that Yi Ting had dodged Xiao Chen's attack. Even his cultivation had been crippled. At this moment, there wasn't even a trace of him left behind. Silence. Following Yi Ting's death, the entire Tianfeng Xingzong fell into a strange silence. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the figure in the sky. Facing the third direct disciple, Yi Ting had been directly killed. What kind of concept was that? After more than 2 months, Xiao Chen had actually grown to such a level. Killing Yi Ting was as easy as slaughtering a chicken. Looking at Xiao Chen's back, Wang Zong was also shocked. From the methods Xiao Chen had just displayed, perhaps even he wouldn't be much better than Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen. You. Wang Zong was completely stunned. Wang Zong stammered as he was completely shocked by what he saw. Hearing this, Xiao Chen turned around and quickly retracted his aura. He had returned to his usual amiable and approachable self. He said with a smile on his face, What's wrong, senior brother Wang Zong? I didn't do anything stupid, right? No. Hearing Xiao Chen's joke, Wang Zong instinctively nodded. What a joke. Xiao Chen did something stupid? How could that be possible? Yi Ting was simply acting recklessly. However, Xiao Chen's improvement was really hard to accept. Wasn't this just like the saying, a scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at with new eyes? Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 722. As the third-ranked direct disciple of Tianfeng Xingzong, Yi Ting was killed by Xiao Chen just like that. The surrounding disciples were dumbfounded, especially the disciples of the Iron Sword sect. Their faces were filled with horror. That was Yi Ting, but now he was squashed to death by Xiao Chen like an ant. Wang Zong joked with Wang Zong. After nodding awkwardly in response, Wang Zong said worriedly, Xiao Chen, you killed Yi Ting just like that. If the sect blames you, at this point, even if Wang Zong couldn't figure it out, Yi Ting's death was a fact. Killing a fellow disciple in the sect, and a direct disciple at that, was no joke. If the sect's higher-ups blamed him, Xiao Chen's outcome would be. He wanted to say that Xiao Chen was in big trouble, but when the words came to his mouth, Wang Zong didn't know how to say it. He could only remind Xiao Chen tactfully. Perhaps it was because Xiao Chen's method of killing Yiting was too brutal, or perhaps it was because Xiao Chen's strength had improved, but Wang Zong couldn't help but feel a little nervous when facing Xiao Chen at this moment. He could say whatever he wanted before, but now he couldn't. Perhaps this was what people often said: strength represented distance. In short, in front of Xiao Chen, Wang Zong had unconsciously brought a touch of respect. Knowing what Wang Zong was worried about, Xiao Chen didn't care about it. He had only killed Yiting, and things weren't over yet. He had said that he would uproot the Iron Sword sect today. How could he just kill Yiting? Xiao Chen didn't want to see such a thing happen again. He still had many friends in Tianfeng Shengzong. He didn't want to see them being bullied again. Moreover, Xiao Chen was about to go to the ancient sacred sect. Whether he would have a chance to come to Tianfeng Shengzong in the future was another matter. Therefore, Xiao Chen planned to settle everything today. His gaze shifted to the core disciple area. There were many core disciples in the Iron Sword sect. They were all involved in bullying the disciples of the Celestial Equal sect. The killing intent in Wang Zong's eyes once again gathered. Sensing the change in Xiao Chen, Wang Zong's gaze also looked towards the core disciple area. Suddenly realizing something, Wang Zong asked somewhat uncertainly, "Xiao Chen, you're not serious, are you?" They had already guessed what Xiao Chen was going to do next, but it was too shocking. How could Xiao Chen do this? Killing Yiting was already a big mistake. If Xiao Chen continued to attack, then Wang Zong didn't dare to continue thinking about it. Although Wang Zong thought that he was also a person who didn't have any taboos, compared to Xiao Chen, it was simply insignificant. Wang Zong didn't dare to think about what Xiao Chen might do next. Wang Zong's face was filled with horror. In response, Xiao Chen smiled and said, "Today is the day to settle everything. How can one Yiting be enough?" Having said that, Xiao Chen took a step forward and his figure instantly appeared above the core disciple area. His gaze swept across the core disciples of the Iron Sword sect. Without hesitation, Xiao Chen pointed his finger and immediately displayed the Chun Jun sword finger. A golden sword ray flashed. While everyone was still in a daze, the golden sword ray suddenly pierced through a core disciple of the Iron Sword sect. Another person was killed. Following the death of this core disciple from the Iron Sword sect, the minds of the surrounding disciples, who were still in a state of shock, went blank. What's going on? Why won't he stop after killing Yiting? Could it be that Xiao Chen intends to kill all the disciples of the Iron Sword sect? One had to know that there were thousands of disciples of the Iron Sword sect. Some people had already guessed Xiao Chen's thoughts. In response, everyone was shocked. Was he going to massacre Tianfeng Shengzong? As if to confirm the disciples' guesses, after killing a core disciple, Xiao Chen said faintly, "Disciples of the Iron Sword sect who are above the Tao querying realm, die." He clearly stated what he was going to do next. Kill all the disciples of the Iron Sword sect who were above the Tao querying realm. As soon as these words were spoken, the entire Tianfeng Shengzong was in an uproar. If what Xiao Chen said was true, how many disciples of the Iron Sword sect would die? It shouldn't be less than 1,000, right? Crazy, absolutely crazy. Hearing this, everyone thought that Xiao Chen must be crazy. If he did this, Tianfeng Shengzong would definitely not let him go, even if he was a direct disciple. The disciples thought that Xiao Chen must be crazy. However, in the next second, Xiao Chen had already begun to act. The Chun Jun sword finger was constantly used. Rays of golden sword light constantly fell from the sky, shooting towards the disciples of the Iron Sword sect. In the face of Xiao Chen's attack, the core disciples had no ability to resist at all. Not long after, 5 core disciples of the Iron Sword sect were killed. It was a completely one-sided massacre. Facing the scene in front of them, everyone was stunned. By the time they came back to their senses, Xiao Chen had already killed all the core disciples of the Iron Sword sect. At this time, Xiao Chen had already gone to the ordinary disciple area. Unsurprisingly, with the arrival of Xiao Chen, the ordinary disciple area was naturally set off a bloody storm. All the disciples of the Iron Sword sect, whose cultivation was above the Tao querying realm, were found and killed one by one. In the face of Xiao Chen's merciless massacre, the disciples of the Iron Sword sect were completely scared out of their wits. One by one, they fled frantically. They were scared, really scared. They thought that the sect was the safest place, but now Tianfeng Xingzong had become a nightmare in their hearts. The disciples of the Iron Sword sect were scared out of their wits. On the other hand, the disciples of the Celestial Equal sect were extremely excited. Without needing Xiao Chen to say anything, everyone had already spontaneously organized themselves to block the disciples of the Iron Sword sect who were fleeing in all directions. Compared to the disciples of the Iron Sword sect and the Celestial Equal sect, the disciples of the other sects were only in shock. Xiao Chen didn't attack them, so they weren't in any danger. However, everything that happened today had indeed subverted the knowledge of all the disciples. There was actually someone who dared to start a massacre in Tianfeng Xingzong. Amidst the shock, some disciples suddenly reacted. Xiao Chen was already in such a state, but why hadn't the elders appeared yet? Where are the elders? Why haven't they appeared? Could it be that the higher-ups have tacitly approved of senior brother Xiao Chen's actions? It had been so long, but not a single elder of Tianfeng Xingzong had appeared. While the disciples were wondering, all the half-sage elders gathered in the main hall of Tianfeng Xingzong. At this moment, the elder in charge of the disciplinary hall, Yan Xing, was angrily looking at He Feng and questioning him coldly. He Feng, what do you mean by this? Why aren't you allowing the disciplinary hall to take action? Xiao Chen wantonly killed people in the sect. Why are you doing this? Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 723. It was not that the elders did not know what had happened in the sect, but they had all gathered in the main hall after receiving He Feng's summons. As the elder in charge of punishment, Yan Xing was naturally duty-bound to punish Xiao Chen for killing so many people in the sect. Furthermore, Yan Xing was an extremely stubborn old man. Therefore, he was furious when He Feng refused to take action for a long time. He didn't care that He Feng was the great elder and questioned him directly. In the face of Yan Xing's cold questioning, He Feng did not argue with him. He knew this old man's character very well. He Feng knew that if he didn't give him an explanation, the old man might really hit him. Left with no choice, He Feng could only tell the truth. This is the Lord's order. Old man Yan, if you have any dissatisfaction, you can ask him yourself when he comes. He Feng wasn't lying. It was indeed the Tianfeng saint's idea to gather all the elders and ignore Xiao Chen. As for the reason, it was very simple. It was because he couldn't punish Xiao Chen. There was no other way. Xiao Chen was no longer a disciple of the Tianfeng Xingzong, but a disciple of the ancient sacred sect. How could the Tianfeng Xingzong punish Xiao Chen? In fact, the Tianfeng saint had already noticed when Xiao Chen killed Yiting. After asking He Feng, he found out that Xiao Chen wanted to take revenge. The Tianfeng saint didn't pay much attention to Yiting's actions in the past 2 months. What a joke! Of course, he wouldn't care about such trivial matters. Knowing that Xiao Chen wanted to take revenge, the Tianfeng saint quickly decided to let Xiao Chen do whatever he wanted. Yiting could only blame himself for provoking Xiao Chen. In any place there were always some people who were above the rules. The rules could not restrain them, and Xiao Chen clearly belonged to this group of people. Tianfeng saint didn't intend to pursue the matter with Xiao Chen. Of course, Xiao Chen couldn't kill the innocent. Tianfeng saint chose to turn a blind eye to Yiting's actions. After all, it wasn't difficult to choose between Xiao Chen and Yiting. Xiao Chen was also very smart. He did not cross the Tianfeng saint's bottom line. Even when facing the disciples of the Iron Sword sect, Shao Chun did not choose to kill them all. He only killed those who were a threat. As for the others, even if they held a grudge against him, they would not be able to do anything to him or the people around him in the future. It could be said that Shao Chun and the Tianfeng Saint had a tacit understanding. Shao Chun knew that the Tianfeng Saint would not blame him. He also knew the severity of the matter. As time passed, the elders of Tianfeng Xingzong only appeared after Shao Chun killed all the disciples of the Iron Sword sect who were above the Dao querying realm. They were led by He Feng. After massacring hundreds of people, the disciples of the Heavenly Wind Saint sect greeted the elders one after another as they waited anxiously for the elders to speak. Obviously, the elders had appeared to judge Shao Chun. Since he dared to kill so many disciples of the same sect, Shao Chun was definitely going to die. Many disciples thought so. Under everyone's gaze, Shao Chun calmly walked in front of He Feng and the other elders. Facing Shao Chun, Yan Xing shouted angrily, "Shao Chun, you're really out of control. I really want to cripple you with my own hands." Yan Xing was obviously furious at Shao Chun's actions. However, from his words, it was obvious that the Tianfeng Saint had already made his decision. This decision made Yan Xing feel helpless because he was destined to not be able to punish Shao Chun. Shao Chun ignored Yan Xing. He had dealt with him before and knew that this old man was a stubborn old man. It was useless to say anything to him. He looked directly at He Feng and waited for him to speak. Shao Chun had already predicted the outcome before he made his move. This was definitely not Shao Chun's impulsive action. After all, Shao Chun was not stupid enough to perish together with Yi Ting just for Yi Ting. It was because he was not afraid of the rules of Tianfeng Xingzong that Shao Chun dared to do this. Facing Shao Chun's stare and seeing how calm he was, He Feng smiled bitterly in his heart. This kid was absolutely fearless from the very beginning. He knew that Tianfeng Saint would not do anything to him. He had to admit that this brat was very smart and knew his limit. At the very least, when the Tianfeng Saint knew the outcome, he was not angry at all. On the contrary, he smiled with satisfaction. Shao Chun, this brat is not bad. He knows his limits. He Feng, go and settle this matter. This was what the Tianfeng Saint said to He Feng. Obviously, the Tianfeng Saint was not angry at Shao Chun's actions. On the contrary, he was very happy. If others knew about this, they would probably think that the Tianfeng Saint was crazy. Shao Chun had brazenly killed a fellow disciple in the sect, and the Tianfeng Saint actually praised him. When he thought about how the Tianfeng Saint dealt with Shao Chun, even He Feng found it hard to believe. The Tianfeng Saint had only expelled Shao Chun from the sect. What a joke! That was enough to kill him several times, but the Tianfeng Saint had only expelled Shao Chun from the sect. Moreover, He Feng knew very well that being expelled from Tianfeng Xingzong meant nothing to Shao Chun. Shao Chun could no longer be considered a disciple of Tianfeng Xingzong, because Shao Chun would soon enter the ancient sage sect. He Feng sighed and announced the Heavenly Wind Saint's punishment in a loud voice. Cough, Shao Chun killed a fellow disciple. Since it was pardonable, he has been expelled from Tianfeng Xingzong as punishment. With a light cough, He Feng's voice resounded in every corner of the Heavenly Wind sacred sect. Hearing this, many disciples were stunned once again, and some even whispered, "Expelled from the Heavenly Wind sacred sect? That's it?" At first, the disciples thought that He Feng had not finished speaking, but after staring at him for a while, they did not wait for him to continue. It seemed that Shao Chun's punishment was indeed expulsion from Tianfeng Xingzong. But how was that possible? Killing a fellow disciple was already a capital offense. Needless to say, Shao Chun had killed hundreds of people. According to the sect's rules, Shao Chun would have been sentenced to death 100 times over. Just a sentence of being expelled from the sect was enough to cover up the matter. Was this really king punishment? No matter how one looked at it, It was the Tianfeng saint who was protecting Xiao Chen. No one thought that the Tianfeng saint would give Xiao Chen such a light punishment. It could even be said that it was not painful at all. Facing the doubts of the disciples, He Feng did not explain too much. He only looked at Xiao Chen and scolded him in a low voice. "You little brat, you really don't know how to make people worry. Alright, say goodbye to everyone today. I'll pick you up tomorrow morning, and you can follow the Tianfeng saint to the ancient sage sect. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me." Chapter 724. He Feng and the other half-saint elders already knew that Xiao Chen had broken through to the Dao Gate realm and would be heading to the ancient saint sect soon. Because of this, the elders were not surprised by the Tianfeng saint's decision. It was indeed reasonable. Even the stubborn Yan Xing accepted this outcome even though he was unhappy. Of course, such a result could only happen to Xiao Chen. If there was anyone who felt that they could imitate Xiao Chen and harm their own disciples in the future, then what awaited them would most likely be severe punishment from the disciplinary hall. If one did not have the strength to transcend the rules, it was best to follow the rules obediently. Otherwise, it would only be playing with fire. Hearing He Feng's words, Xiao Chen bowed respectfully and said, "Thank you, First Elder. No need to thank me. Anyway, you won't be able to trouble me in the future. Alright, go. Remember, don't cause any more trouble." He Feng scolded Xiao Chen with a smile and then left with the elders. As for the aftermath, it would naturally be taken care of by the deacon of Tianfeng Xingzong. Xiao Chen did not need to worry about it. In short, what seemed to be an earth-shattering event was left unsettled in the end. The result was that Xiao Chen was expelled from Tianfeng Xingzong. This was absolutely shocking. Without a doubt, this was the first time in the history of Tianfeng Xingzong. Xiao Chen had killed hundreds of his fellow disciples, but he was not punished at all. Xiao Chen did not care about the astonishment and thoughts of the disciples. After all, he was going to leave tomorrow. After returning to his residence and comforting the four girls, Xiao Chen planned to gather his close friends and have a meal at the Cool Breeze restaurant. It could also be considered a farewell. However, before Xiao Chen could order people to invite them, they had already taken the initiative to come to his residence. Wang Zong was the first to arrive with Wang Fang. Then, Mu Feng, Nangong Yan, and the others came one after another to Xiao Chen's residence. Looking at Xiao Chen, Wang Fang and Nangong Yan looked as if they were looking at something new. They stared at Xiao Chen for a long time without saying a word. Xiao Chen felt a little uncomfortable being stared at by the two girls. Finally, he asked with a smile, "What's wrong with you guys? Don't you recognize me?" "No, we were just wondering if you were the Lord's illegitimate son. How could it be so simple? I thought you were dead this time." Wang Fang replied after hearing Xiao Chen's words with a smile. "That's right, Xiao Chen. I really can't see through you now that you've returned. Let's not talk about your combat strength. After causing such a huge mess, you were only expelled from the sect. Really. If it were me, I'm afraid that I would have already been sent to the little black room in the punishment hall." Wang Zong chimed in as Wang Fang's voice faded. What happened today was really unexpected. In response, Xiao Chen shook his head with a smile. He wanted to say that when you become the prospective holy son of the ancient saint sect, you can do it too. However, Xiao Chen did not say it out loud in the end. After joking around for a while, Nangong Yan was the first to stop smiling. She said with some reluctance, "But, although he's not, Xiao Chen will be kicked out of Tianfeng Xingzong in the future." Hearing Nangong Yan's words, everyone's expression became serious. Indeed, Xiao Chen had been kicked out of Tianfeng Xingzong, which meant that he would be leaving soon. Everyone was a little disappointed. In response, Xiao Chen smiled and comforted them. "Don't worry, I'm indeed leaving Tianfeng Xingzong, but I'm not homeless. This time, I plan to go to the ancient saint sect, and the Lord has agreed to it." Xiao Chun told everyone that he was going to the Ancient Saint sect. Of course, he did not say that he was going to the Ancient Saint sect to participate in the prospective Holy Sun assessment. After all, the prospective Holy Sun assessment was indeed a little scary. Hearing Xiao Chen's explanation, Wang Feng was the first to react. She said, "Well, so you and the Lord have already discussed it. That's why the Lord wants to kick you out of the Ancient Saint sect. In this case, the punishment will not hurt you at all. After all, if you enter the Ancient Saint sect, it means that you're leaving Tianfeng Xingzong." After knowing that Xiao Chen was going to the Ancient Saint sect, everyone realized that the punishment given to Xiao Chen by Tianfeng Saint was absolutely meaningless. Some people were jealous of Tianfeng Saint's preference for Xiao Chen. Of course, they were more happy for Xiao Chen. In this way, everyone was happy. Because they were going to leave tomorrow, everyone went to the Cool Breeze restaurant to have a big meal. In the future, they would no longer be disciples of Tianfeng Xingzong, so it was useless to keep the contribution points. After the meal, Xiao Chen gave all his contribution points to Mu Feng. After all, Mu Feng still needed to cultivate in Tianfeng Xingzong. These contribution points were obviously of great help to him. After a hearty drinking session, although everyone was reluctant to leave, there was no such thing as an eternal banquet. After leaving the Cool Breeze restaurant, everyone said goodbye to Xiao Chen one by one. "Brother Xiao Chen, be careful when you go to the Ancient Saint sect," Mu Feng said. "Xiao Chen, be careful when you go to the Ancient Saint sect. When my brother and I go to the Ancient Saint sect, you have to take care of us," Wang Feng said. "Xiao Chen, I will also go to the Ancient Saint sect. At that time, you have to protect me too," Nangongyan said. "See you at the Ancient Saint sect," Wang Zong said. Everyone said goodbye to Xiao Chen one by one. In the end, Xiao Chen also smiled and nodded. "Well, see you at the Ancient Saint sect. When you come, I will definitely treat you to the best wine in the entire Ancient Saint state." "Then it's a promise?" "Yes, it's a promise." After bidding farewell to everyone, Xiao Chen returned to his residence. As soon as he entered, Xiao Chen's 4 maidservants came to greet him. They took Xiao Chen's coat and poured tea for Xiao Chen. Although they were serving Xiao Chen as usual, Xiao Chen could clearly sense the dejection in their hearts. Xiao Chen asked with a smile, "What are you waiting for? What's wrong? Why do you all look so down?" When they heard Xiao Chen's words, the 4 maidservants' eyes turned red and they choked with sobs. We just thought that young master is going to the Ancient Saint sect tomorrow. And the 4 of them were maidservants who had followed Xiao Chen ever since Xiao Chen joined the Tianfeng Xingzong. Now that Xiao Chen was leaving, it was easy to imagine their fate. There were only 2 paths. They could either become ordinary disciples of the Tianfeng Xingzong, or be assigned to other personal disciples as maidservants. But to them, neither path was what they wanted. In their hearts, they wanted to follow Xiao Chen more. Xiao Chen was approachable and never treated them as servants. Moreover, Xiao Chen was handsome and dashing. The 4 maidservants had long fallen in love with him. They did not ask for anything else. They just wanted to be by Xiao Chen's side and be his maidservants. That was enough. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me. If you want to chat about Sword Master of 8 Desolations with more like-minded people, follow excellent reading literature on WeChat. Chat about life, find friends. Chapter 725. The 4 women were all in low spirits and their eyes were slightly red. Their watery eyes looked like they were about to burst into tears. Xiao Chen naturally knew what the 4 women were thinking when he saw their expressions. He called out their names one by one in a gentle voice. "Fei Mei, Anlan, Lu Zhu, Si Ju. What's wrong? Don't you want to go to the ancient sacred sect with me?" Fei Mei and the others didn't react at first when they heard Xiao Chen call out their names one by one. They held back their tears and responded. However, they were stunned when they heard Xiao Chen's last sentence. "What's wrong? Don't you want to go to the ancient sacred sect with me?" Xiao Chen's words echoed in the four women's ears. They were stunned and didn't react for a moment. After learning that Xiao Chen was going to the ancient sacred sect, the four women had been depressed. They wanted to be by Xiao Chen's side, but they knew that if they made such a request to Xiao Chen, they would be too willful. After all, Xiao Chen had just arrived at the ancient sacred sect, and he hadn't even established himself yet. How could he bring them along? Knowing that they couldn't be willful, the four women had been suppressing the sadness in their hearts. Now that they heard this, could it be that the young master planned to bring them to the ancient sacred sect from the beginning? The four women's imaginations ran wild, and the truth was that Xiao Chen did not invite Fei Mei and the others to the banquet at the Cool Breeze Inn today. The reason was that Xiao Chen had planned to take the four women to the ancient sacred sect. In Xiao Chen's heart, Fei Mei and the others were different from Wang Zong and the others. Wang Zong and the others were friends, while Fei Mei and the others were more like family. Unlike his feelings for Qin Shuru, Bai Hua Fairy, and Gu Lingyao, Xiao Chen treated Fei Mei and the others as his family. They were more like his younger sisters. Therefore, from the very beginning, Xiao Chen had never thought of abandoning Fei Mei and the other three girls. With a faint smile on his face, Xiao Chen asked with a teasing smile, "What? You don't want to go to the ancient sacred sect with me?" "Yes, we want to go with young master." When they heard Xiao Chen's question, the four girls replied in unison. However, as soon as they finished speaking, the four girls lowered their heads and blushed, not daring to look at Xiao Chen. Seeing that the four girls were so shy, Xiao Chen was amused. He stood up and laughed. "If you want to wait for me in Tianfeng Xingzong, I will tell the holy sage. After I arrange everything in the ancient holy sect, I will come to Tianfeng Xingzong to pick you up." With that, Xiao Chen strode out of the hall. Looking at Xiao Chen's back as he left, the four girls cautiously raised their heads after a while. There was still a hint of redness on their cheeks. Then, Green Bamboo, who had the most lively personality, was the first to dance with joy. "That's great. I knew that young master would not abandon us." "You still say that? I wonder who was the one who cried the most and kept saying that young master did not want you anymore." The four girls smiled at Lu Zhu's cheers. I don't want to talk to you anymore, Sister Si Ju." Lu Zhu blushed when she heard Si Ju's teasing. Xiao Chen's decision undoubtedly made the four girls very happy. However, they did not know that not only them, but also Qin Yao, Qin Luo, and Xiao Chen had the same thoughts. They liked the six maidservants very much, so Xiao Chen selfishly wanted them to stay by his side. Of course, this was not because Xiao Chen liked the six girls, but because Xiao Chen liked the feeling of being served by the six girls. Since everyone liked to be together, why should they be separated? Moreover, as the people closest to him, Xiao Chen naturally hoped that the maidservants by his side could be completely trusted. There was no need to keep switching. Qin Yao, Qin Luo, Fei Mei, Anlan, Lu Zhu, and Si Ju, these six ladies were very good. They were loyal and devoted, and they were nimble and skillful in doing things. Moreover, everyone had feelings for each other. Why not let these six ladies be in charge of serving him? This was Xiao Chen's truest thought. Of course, perhaps no one knew that many years later, the six maidservants by Xiao Chen's side would become the six sword attendants that shocked the world. They became existences that countless cultivators feared as maidservants. Without any worries, Fei Mei and the other girls were naturally no longer unhappy. The next morning, the four girls happily helped Xiao Chen wake up and wash up. Xiao Chen put on his clothes with the help of the four girls. Then, he smiled at the four girls and said, "Wait for me at Tianfeng Xingzong. I'll come and fetch you after you've settled down." "Yes, young master, you have to take care of yourself." Fei Mei and the other girls smiled sweetly when they heard Xiao Chen's words. After bidding farewell to the four girls, Xiao Chen was led by He Feng all the way to the peak of the Tianfeng Sacred Mountain, which was the residence of the Tianfeng Saint. There, Xiao Chen saw the Tianfeng Saint and the Kuang Li Saint. Xiao Qin bowed and called out, "Disciple Xiao Qin greets the sacred masters." "Haha, there's no need to be so polite. Is everything ready?" The Kuang-Li saint laughed heartily when he heard Xiao Qian's words. The two sacred masters did not mention yesterday's matter. Clearly, yesterday's matter was not worth mentioning in their eyes. Right now, they were most concerned about whether Xiao Qin could become the quasi-holy son of the ancient sacred sect. Everything had been taken care of and they could leave at any time. However, Xiao Qin still told the Tianfeng saint and the Kuang-Li saint that he was going to bring the four girls to the ancient sacred sect. Of course, the four girls would still enter the ancient sacred sect as Xiao Qin's maids. The Tianfeng saint and the Kuang-Li saint naturally did not reject this. With Xiao Qin's talent, even if he could not become the quasi-holy son, he would definitely be a direct disciple. A direct disciple bringing four maids to the ancient sacred sect was not a big deal. After all, they were not considered disciples of the ancient sacred sect. It was not a big deal at all. Afterward, under the lead of the Kuang-Li saint and the Tianfeng saint, the three of them went to the ancient sacred sect through the teleportation array. He did not expect that even the Tianfeng saint would personally make a trip to the ancient sacred sect. At the peak of the Tianfeng sacred mountain, there was a special teleportation array that connected to the ancient sacred sect. It was usually not opened. After a moment of dizziness, Xiao Qin regained his senses. The three of them were already outside a teleportation array of the ancient sacred sect. Looking at the unfamiliar environment, the Kuang-Li saint laughed heartily. His laughter was filled with pride. "How is it, kid? This is the ancient sacred sect. It is also the place where all the experts of the ancient sacred state gather. I think this should be the place that suits you. Haha." Hearing Saint Kuang-Li's words, Xiao Qin could not help but feel excited. He murmured softly, "A place where experts gather? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 726. This was the first time Xiao Qin had come to the ancient sacred sect. His heart was filled with a myriad of emotions. It had been a long time since he first arrived at the Tianhe continent. Now, Xiao Qin finally arrived at the ancient sacred sect, one of the four major sects that dominated the Tianhe continent. Although Tianfeng Shengzong was also known as a sacred sect, Tianfeng Shengzong paled in comparison to the ancient sacred sect. Strictly speaking, there was only one sacred sect in the entire ancient sacred state, and that was the ancient sacred sect. This was because the Tianfeng saint and the others were all saints that belonged to the ancient sacred sect. As the true center of the ancient sacred state, where experts from all over gathered, the ancient sacred sect controlled everything in the ancient sacred state. Walking out of the teleportation array, Xiao Qin discovered that the entire ancient sacred sect was built on an endless plain. However, the buildings of the ancient sacred sect were actually floating in midair. An entire cluster of buildings that stretched for an unknown number of miles floated in midair. From afar, it looked like a fairyland. Within the sect, disciples of the ancient sacred sect could be seen flying in the air between the various buildings. Imagine a sect that was built in midair. In order to survive in the ancient sacred sect, one had to be at least in the Tao querying realm. This was because one had to be able to fly. Otherwise, one wouldn't even be able to leave the ancient sacred sect. In the ancient sacred sect, it was impossible for martial artists below the Tao querying realm to survive. Of course, as the ruler of the ancient sacred state, the ancient sacred sect wouldn't accept martial artists below the Tao querying realm. As though he was walking through a fairyland, Xiao Qin arrived at the core of the ancient sacred sect under the lead of the Kuang-Li saint and the Tianfeng saint. This was also where the sacred hall of the ancient sacred sect was located. As the name suggested, the sacred hall was the place where the saints of the ancient sacred sect discussed matters. Of course, most of the time the sacred hall was just a symbol. This was because the saints rarely gathered together. Once they did, it meant that something big was about to happen. It was a magnificent sacred hall. Xiao Chen thought that he had seen many magnificent palaces before, such as the main hall of Tianfeng Xingzong, and so on. However, after seeing the sacred hall of the ancient sacred sect with his own eyes, Xiao Chen realized that the magnificent palaces that he had seen before were like thatched huts compared to the sacred hall. The two palaces weren't on the same level at all. If Xiao Chen wanted to become the chosen son of the ancient sacred sect, he naturally needed to go through a series of assessments. Furthermore, the appointment of the chosen son and the chosen son required the approval of all the saints of the ancient sacred sect before it could take effect. Now, the first step was naturally to test Xiao Chen's Haotian gate. Currently, there were only a total of 4 saints in the ancient sacred sect, and there were only 4 prospective saints. Of course, being a prospective saint didn't mean that they would definitely become a saint. It only meant that they had the possibility of becoming a saint. As for whether they could actually become one was still uncertain. After all, being a saint wasn't just a matter of battle prowess. It was also very strict about age. If they failed to become a saint before reaching the age of a certain age, they would be demoted to personal disciples. As a result, becoming a prospective saint didn't mean that they could become a saint. These were 2 different matters. Moreover, based on past experience, there might not even be a single saint out of 10 prospective saints. "Let's go in," the Tianfeng saint said softly to Xiao Chen. With that, the Tianfeng saint and the Kuang-Li saint entered the sacred hall first. The sacred hall was magnificent and solemn. As soon as he entered, Xiao Chen saw numerous statues standing on both sides of the passageway. The passageway led to the depths of the sacred hall. There were a total of several dozen statues, representing all the saints that had appeared since the ancient sacred sect's founding. Among them, Xiao Chen saw the Tianfeng saint, the Kuang-Li saint, and the Qingju saint. Xiao Chen even saw the statues of the 6 quasi-saints in the depths of the sacred hall. The 6 quasi-saints were the founding masters of the ancient sacred sect. They were also the ones who had founded the ancient sacred sect. He went all the way to the main hall at the core of the holy sanctum. After passing through the long corridor known as the Corridor of the Saints, Xiao Chen saw a circular hall before him. The ceiling of the hall was very high, and the entire hall was built with pieces of spiritual stones. Using spiritual stones to build a building was definitely unprecedented. At the same time, because of the spiritual stones, the entire hall seemed like the starry sky, giving off an extremely profound feeling. Within the extremely spacious hall, there were 16 prayer mats arranged in a semicircle. The 16 prayer mats represented the 16 saints that the ancient sacred sect currently possessed. After bringing Xiao Chen into the hall, a handsome young man's figure gradually appeared on one of the prayer mats. It was the Qingju saint. The Qingju saint smiled at the Kuang-Li saint and the Tianfeng saint. "You can begin." According to the rules, 3 saints had to be present at the same time to confirm the birth of the chosen saint. Now there were 3 saints present at the same time, which was in accordance with the rules of the ancient sacred sect. Hearing Saint Qingjue's words, Saint Kuang-Li and Saint Tianfeng also came to their own futons and sat down cross-legged. Under the gaze of the 3 saints, Xiao Chen was about to demonstrate his Tao. "Kid, this is the ancient path stone tablet. Inject your spiritual energy into it and the stone tablet will manifest your Tao gate. Go on," Saint Qingju said with a smile as he threw out a huge stone tablet that was more than 10 meters tall from his storage ring. With that, Xiao Chen slowly walked over to the steel. He slowly extended his right hand and gently pressed it against the steel. It was cold to the touch. Afterwards, as Xiao Chen poured his spiritual energy into it, the steel began to emit a faint white light. Because of the white light, the steel seemed to become a gate of Tao. This gate of Tao was the gate of Tao within Xiao Chen's body. There were 8 corners at the top. The 3 saints' expressions did not change at all when they saw the changes to the steel. After all, they already knew that Xiao Chen's gate of Tao was an octagonal gate of Tao. The only reason they had to test it again was because of the rules of the ancient sacred sect. Moreover, the process of the test had to be recorded through talismans for the other saints to watch. After all, the chosen saint's appointment required the approval of all the saints. It is indeed an octagonal gate of Tao. Not bad. Since that's the case, let's arrange for this kid to take the test. The Qingju saint nodded slightly. After confirming the gate of Tao, Xiao Qin was arranged to rest in a small courtyard. Because he had not completed the test, strictly speaking, Xiao Qin was not a disciple of the ancient sacred sect. This was only Xiao Qin's temporary residence. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 727. Because it was only a temporary residence, Xiao Qin didn't have any requests. However, the Tianfeng saint actually came to visit that night, which surprised Xiao Qin. The Tianfeng saint naturally had something to tell Xiao Qin. The two of them took their seats in the room. The Tianfeng saint sat on the main seat and looked at Xiao Qin with admiration in his eyes. Xiao Qin, the time for your assessment has been set. It will begin tomorrow. Tomorrow would be the day of the candidate saint's assessment. Xiao Qin did not mind and nodded in response. Seeing this, Tianfeng saint also smiled. You don't have to worry too much about the prospective saint's assessment. Originally, I intended to let you take the assessment after 2 years. However, Kuang-Li said that it would be helpful for you to take the assessment first. Thinking about it, it makes sense. Therefore, you don't have to feel too pressured during this assessment. Just take it as accumulating experience and preparing for the next assessment. After all, you're still young, so there's no need to be too anxious. The Tianfeng saint and the others didn't have high hopes for Xiao Qin's assessment this time. The most important reason was that Xiao Qin was too young and his cultivation was too low. Under normal circumstances, the minimum cultivation needed to be at the great perfection of the Tao Gate realm to take part in the assessment. Some prospective saints were even at the Tao Transformation realm when they took part in the assessment. Moreover, the requirements for the prospective saint and the saint were the same. As long as they weren't over 100 years old, they could take part in the assessment. Therefore, the Tianfeng saint said that Xiao Qin was too young. It was also because Xiao Qin was too young and his cultivation was too low that the Tianfeng saint didn't have high hopes for Xiao Qin. Of course, with Xiao Qin's current age and talent, there was no problem at all for him to become the candidate's son. Even if there were no accidents, there would be no problem for him to become the son. However, what Xiao Qin needed now was time to settle down. It was as if he had already determined that Xiao Qin would fail this time. Even the Tianfeng saint had already arranged everything for Xiao Qin. After tomorrow's assessment, Xiao Qin would enter the ancient saint sect and become a pro-disciple first. 2 years later, he would take the assessment of the candidate saint. These 2 years would give Xiao Qin enough time. Upon hearing the Tianfeng saint's words, Xiao Qin muttered to himself, accumulating experience? The Tianfeng saint and the others didn't think highly of him, but in Xiao Qin's opinion, he didn't have that much time to waste. Therefore, this time, Xiao Qin wasn't planning on accumulating experience. Instead, he wanted to do his best and pass the test in one go. Of course, Xiao Qin didn't say these thoughts out loud. Nodding, Xiao Qin said, I will work hard. Okay, then rest early. I will come and pick you up tomorrow. Hearing this, the Tianfeng saint nodded and left. After the Tianfeng saint left, Xiao Qin asked Xiao Xing gloomily, Old ancestor, do you think I can pass the assessment? The Tianfeng saint and the others don't think highly of me. Kid, what's wrong? Don't you have confidence? Logically speaking, with your cultivation, it's naturally impossible for you to pass the assessment. However, you have the tempered battle body and I am here. This assessment is nothing. Hearing Xiao Qin's words, Xiao Xing replied with a smile. Although there was no specific cultivation level requirement for the candidate to pass the assessment, the lowest cultivation level of anyone who passed the assessment was at the Great Fulfillment of the Tao Gate realm. Xiao Chen was only at the entry level of the Tao Gate realm, so the success rate was almost zero. However, Xiao Chen had the tempered battle body and Xiao Chen's existence. These 2 points could make up for Xiao Chen's lack of cultivation to a certain extent. Moreover, from Xiao Xing's tone, it seemed like passing the assessment wasn't difficult at all. With Xiao Xing's words, Xiao Chen was somewhat confident. In fact, Xiao Chen wasn't unaware that it wasn't the best time for him to participate in the assessment. However, Xiao Chen had his own reasons. Rather than follow the Tianfeng saint's advice and train as a direct disciple for 2 years, he might as well do his best to obtain the position of the saint. In any case, Xiao Chen would need time to improve himself. How could the treatment of a direct disciple compare to that of a saint? Rather than wasting 2 years, Xiao Chen might as well take 1 step at a time. In this way, he could enjoy the treatment of a saint for 2 more years, which would naturally be more beneficial to his cultivation. It was precisely because of this idea that Xiao Chen was so desperate. Xiao Chen cultivated quietly for a night in his residence. The next morning, the Tianfeng saint came to pick him up personally. At the same time, the news that someone was going to take the test of the candidate had somehow spread among the disciples of the ancient saint sect. There was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world, especially when it came to something as important as the assessment. Therefore, the news that someone was going to participate in the assessment had already spread, and many disciples paid close attention to it. In a quaint courtyard in the ancient sacred sect, this courtyard was definitely one of the most famous places in the ancient sacred sect. Not only was the environment beautiful, but it was also the residence of one of the 4 saints of the ancient sacred sect, Chen Yu. Chen Yu was sitting cross-legged beside a stream in the courtyard. There was a stream running through the courtyard, and Chen Yu was holding a fishing rod and fishing idly by the stream. Just as Chen Yu was yawning out of boredom, Yisu had appeared behind him out of nowhere. Her face was still expressionless as she spoke. "Saint, I heard that someone is going to challenge the assessment today." Upon hearing Yisu's words, Chen Yu said lazily, I already knew about this. That kid, Xiao Chen, is really not simple. How long has it been since we last met? I didn't expect that kid to have already broken through to the Tao Gate realm. Chen Yu had known about this for a long time. Not only that, but he also knew that the challenger was Xiao Chen. It wasn't just Chen Yu. In the other 3 residences of the saints of the ancient sacred sect, the other 3 saints were also discussing Xiao Chen. Hu Fei, who had met Xiao Chen once before, was currently cultivating his spear arts in the courtyard. This guy was a cultivation maniac, and he was cultivating almost all the time. After completing a set of spear arts, Hu Fei put away his spear and looked towards the location of the assessment. His eyes flickered with an inexplicable light. "Xiao Chen, it seems that I really underestimated you last time." Xiao Chen didn't know that the entire ancient sacred sect was paying attention to him. Following the Tianfeng saint, Xiao Chen arrived at the location of the assessment. It was located in an independent space deep within the ancient sacred sect's sacred palace. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 728. Behind the ancient saint sect's sacred palace, there was a small palace. From the outside, this palace did not look special at all, especially when compared to the majestic sacred palace. This small palace did not seem to have any redeeming qualities. However, all the disciples of the ancient sacred sect knew that this small palace was no less important to the ancient sacred sect than the sacred palace. This palace was called the Myriad World Palace, and it was where all the entrances to the small worlds of the ancient sacred sect were located. It was called the Myriad World Palace, and it was like a gate to the palace. There were a total of 18 tunnels, and each of them was an entrance to a small world. These 18 small worlds were all the independent small worlds that the ancient sacred sect controlled. Among them was the small world where the prospective Holy Sun test was held. At the same time, the small world where the Holy Sun test was held, as well as some other special small world entrances. He directly led Xiao Chen into one of the tunnels. After walking along the tunnel for about 10 minutes, Xiao Chen saw 2 white stone pillars at the end of the tunnel. These 2 white stone pillars were the entrances to the small world where the prospective Holy Sun test was held. Without wasting any time, Tianfeng Saint directly opened the entrance. A white light connected the 2 stone pillars, and a door of light formed in front of Xiao Chen. The prospective Holy Sun test is actually a replica of the Holy Sun test. It's not as good as the Holy Sun test in all aspects. Of course, there won't be any danger to your life. Go ahead. If you fail, the power in this space will forcefully send you out. He had already told Xiao Chen everything he needed to say last night. Moreover, the prospective Holy Sun test wouldn't be life-threatening. At most, he would be seriously injured. Therefore, Tianfeng Saint didn't say anything more. He directly let Xiao Chen enter and start the test. Hearing Tianfeng Saint's words, Xiao Chen nodded and did not say anything else. He then took a step forward and entered the small world. Xiao Chen's figure disappeared, and the door of light slowly disappeared. The entrance closed, and Tianfeng Saint returned to the sacred palace. He didn't need to worry about what would happen next. If Xiao Chen failed the test, he would naturally be sent out. When Saint Tianfeng arrived at the shrine, there was another red-haired middle-aged man in the shrine besides Saint Kuang Li and Saint Qing Ju. Obviously, he was a holy son of the ancient saint sect. Tianfeng, how was it? Did the kid go in? The red-haired man asked Tianfeng Saint. Hearing this, Tianfeng Saint nodded and said, "Yes, but he should be sent out soon. After all, his cultivation is too low." The red-haired man was called Saint Huiyun. Like Saint Qingju, he was also a saint of the ancient sacred sect. He happened to be free today. When he heard that Xiao Chen was going to challenge the prospective Holy Sun test, he came to the sacred palace out of curiosity. Now that Tianfeng Saint insisted that Xiao Chen would fail, Saint Huiyun said unhappily, Hey, don't pour cold water on me. Besides, since you all think that this kid will fail, why did you open the fake heaven stairway world? Don't you know that the fake heaven stairway world needs a lot of energy to open each time? The small world of the Holy Sun test was called the Heaven Stairway World. The prospective Holy Sun test was created based on the Holy Sun test, so the small world was also called the fake Heaven Stairway World. Whether it was opening the Heaven Stairway World or the fake Heaven Stairway World, it naturally consumed energy. Saint Huiyun said unhappily. Hearing this, Saint Kuangli laughed loudly. Haha, it's just a little bit of waste. It's nothing. This kid is worth it. This time, he's just accumulating some experience. Haha. Knowing that Xiao Chen would fail, Saint Tianfeng and Saint Kuang Li still opened the fake heaven stairway world for Xiao Chen. To put it bluntly, it was because they thought highly of Xiao Chen's talent and hoped to give Xiao Chen more experience. Although the fake heaven stairway world was used for the test, there were many benefits in it. Facing Saint Kuang Li's laughter, Saint Huiyun curled his lips and said, opening the back door is simply wasting the sacred sect's resources. Be careful not to be taught a lesson by the Patriarch. Don't worry, the Patriarch already knows. It's fine. Besides, with Xiao Chen's talent, this waste is nothing. Saint Kuangli laughed. The 4 saints chatted in the sacred palace, waiting for Xiao Chen to fail and be sent out of the fake heaven stairway world. At the same time, Xiao Chen, who had entered the fake heaven stairway world, appeared in a completely dark space. It was dark all around. Only in front of Xiao Chen was a stone staircase that stretched out endlessly. This stone staircase seemed to be suspended in the dark world, and this was Xiao Chen's only path. Looking at this fake heaven stairway, Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with curiosity. This is the fake heaven stairway. As long as I reach the end of this fake heaven stairway, I'll be considered to have passed the test. Previously, he already knew the requirements of the test. As Xiao Chen's voice fell, Xiao Xing's voice rang in his mind. That's right, kid. This is the fake heaven stairway. You'll have to do the first few steps by yourself. After that, I'll make a move at the last step. So, don't think that you'll be safe with me around. You still have to rely on yourself. Xiao Xing would only help Xiao Chen pass the last step. According to Xiao Xing, Xiao Chen had no way of passing the last step of the fake heaven stairway with his strength. However, before that, Xiao Chen could only rely on himself. If he couldn't pass, then he couldn't blame anyone else. Xiao Chen naturally didn't have any objections to Xiao Xing's decision. After all, he didn't want to rely too much on other people's strength. If Xiao Xing hadn't said that he had no hope of passing the last step, Xiao Chen probably wouldn't have let Xiao Xing make a move. Hearing Xiao Xing's words, Xiao Chen smiled slightly and said, "No problem. If I can't pass, then it's because I'm not strong enough. However, I think that there's no reason why I can't pass this fake heaven stairway. Even if I have to risk my life, I'll become the candidate today." With a confident smile on his face, Xiao Chen immediately walked towards the fake heaven stairway. At the same time, in Xiao Chen's body, Xiao Xing heard Xiao Chen's words and felt the strong confidence and firm determination in Xiao Chen's body. He couldn't help but smile. "Kid, I really don't know what sin the sacred insect has committed to snatch your woman. I'm really looking forward to the day when you go to the sacred insect. It'll be very interesting then. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 729. Without the slightest hesitation, Xiao Chen stepped onto the fake sky staircase. As soon as his feet landed on the first step, a terrifying pressure suddenly descended from the sky. His feet could not help but tremble, but Xiao Chen quickly stabilized his body. Gravity? It's really heavy. Xiao Chen was not surprised by the appearance of this gravitational force, as Xiao Xing had already told him about it before. Strangely enough, Xiao Xing was very familiar with the ancient sacred sect's fake sky stairway and sky stairway. Xiao Xing had previously told Lin Fan that regardless of whether it was the fake sky stairway or sky stairway, once one stepped onto it, one would have to endure a huge gravitational force. Moreover, as one continued to move forward, the gravitational force would continue to increase. It was indeed not an easy task to move forward against the ever-increasing gravity. However, this was only the beginning. The current gravity was not unbearable for Xiao Chen. He did not even use the tempered body of battle. He simply continued to move forward against the gravity. Along the way, the gravity continued to increase, and it was starting to become a little strenuous. In the pitch-black space, there was only an endless stone staircase, and a young man who was constantly climbing along the stone staircase. The entire world seemed somewhat desolate and bleak. There was no sense of time here, so after walking for a long time, Xiao Chen finally saw a circular stone platform in front of him. The stone platform separated the stairway and had a diameter of about 50 meters. Seeing the stone platform, Xiao Chen smiled. Finally here? The first fake sky platform. There were 6 fake sky platforms on the fake stairway, and there were also 6 fake sky platforms on the fake sky platforms. The fake sky platforms could be regarded as 6 light cards. Once you reached the fake sky platform, you had to defeat the guardian of the fake sky platform. Only then could you continue to climb the fake sky platform. Otherwise, you would end up in failure. Did you think that the candidate's examination was only about the gravity on the fake sky platform? Obviously not. To put it bluntly, the gravity on the fake sky platform was just an appetizer. If you couldn't even bear this little bit of gravity, it could only mean that you were not qualified to participate in the candidate's examination. The real 6 obstacles on the fake sky platform were the fake sky platforms. Each fake sky platform represented a tough battle and a strong enemy. Only by defeating these strong enemies could one pass the candidate's examination. Xiao Chun stepped onto the first fake sky platform. As soon as he stepped on the fake sky platform, the entire circular stone platform suddenly burst out with a dazzling golden light. The golden light formed a layer of boundary that sealed the surrounding space. At the same time, a young man in a green robe slowly condensed in front of Xiao Chun. As the young man finished condensing, the expression on Xiao Chun's face became somewhat unnatural. Tianfeng Saint indeed, the young man in front of Xiao Chun was Tianfeng Saint, or rather Tianfeng Saint when he was young. The guards of the fake sky platforms on the fake sky platform were all saints of the ancient holy sect. Of course, they weren't real people, they were just condensed by the power of the talisman spell. On top of that, their strength was only the same as when they were young. For example, the Tianfeng Saint who had appeared in front of Xiao Chun was only at the initial level of the Tao Gate layer. In other words, the Tianfeng Saint was at the initial level of the Tao Gate layer. The saints of the ancient holy sect were the guardians of the 6 fake Tiantai. Of course, the saints of the ancient holy sect were different, depending on luck. However, the difficulty of the Tiantai didn't change because of the saint. After all, they were all very strong. I met Tianfeng Saint on the first one. I wonder what kind of saints I'll meet on the other 5 fake sky platforms. Xiao Chun did not panic at all because of the upcoming battle. On the contrary, he was looking forward to seeing which saints he would encounter in the next 5 fake roofs. Xiao Chun was really interested in the fake sky platforms. Because of the 6 fake sky platforms, Xiao Chun had the opportunity to compete with the saints of the ancient holy sect. At the same time, Xiao Chun could feel the difference between him and the saints of the ancient holy sect when they were at the same age. According to Xiao Xing, the strength of the talisman spell didn't mean that he had to defeat the saints. As long as he met the requirements, the strength of the talisman spell would disperse and the saints' images would disappear. I don't have to win? Come to think of it, our opponents are all saints of the past. Being able to defeat all of them at the same time is definitely a very difficult task. While Xiao Chun was sizing up the young Tianfeng Saint before him, the Tianfeng Saint's image spoke slowly. The initial level of the Tao Gate layer? Your cultivation level is too low. Go back. You won't be able to defeat me. After that, a gap appeared behind Xiao Chun. Obviously, the Tianfeng Saint was telling Xiao Chun to leave. What a joke! How dare a Tao Gate cultivator challenge a fake sky platform cultivator? He was underestimating the Tianfeng Saint. Xiao Chun had no intention of backing down in the face of Tianfeng Saint's actions. He said with a confident smile on his face. So what if I'm a Tao Gate cultivator? Can't I defeat you? Xiao Chun knew that the Tianfeng Saint in front of him was not a real person, but merely a manifestation of the power of the rune. Therefore, Xiao Chun did not hesitate to speak. As he spoke, Xiao Xing also exuded a strong battle intent. For some reason, Xiao Chun's battle intent was stronger than usual when he faced the saints of the ancient holy sect. Perhaps it was because Xiao Chun really wanted to see how big the gap was between him and the saints of the ancient holy sect at the same age. Or rather, to see who was stronger. The young Saint Tianfeng laughed when he heard Xiao Chun's words and the battle intent released by Xiao Chun. Haha, it seems like you're very confident. Do you think you can fight against saints of the same age? Your cultivation level is lower than mine. Do you think you have a chance of winning? How would I know if I don't fight? Xiao Chun replied with a smile. Interesting. Since that's the case, I'll give you a chance. Let me see how a Tao Gate cultivator like you can defeat saints of the same age. The gap behind Xiao Chun disappeared. At the same time, the young Saint Tianfeng took the initiative to attack. He threw a punch at Xiao Chun. The power of the punch instantly let Xiao Chun know that the Tianfeng Saint in front of him was definitely not an ordinary person. To be able to become a saint, He must have been an extremely dazzling genius when he was young. Xiao Qian's eyes were burning with fighting spirit. Then let me see how strong a young saint is, he said softly. Xiao Qian didn't dodge. Instead, he threw a punch at the Tianfeng saint's fist. Please add it to your collection. Please recommend it. End of chapter. Chapter 730. Almost at the same time, Xiao Qian and the Tianfeng saint's fists collided with a muffled boom. A terrifying gust of wind swept out. Feeling the power coming from the Tianfeng saint's fist, Xiao Qian did not dare to hold back and went all out. This was the first time Xiao Qian had truly gone all out in a battle after breaking through to the Dao Gate realm. Previously, when facing Tang Tiancheng and Yi Ting, Xiao Qian had actually held back because their strength was not worthy of Xiao Qian's full strength. Now, facing the Tianfeng saint, who was at the same level as him, Xiao Qian could finally use his full strength and fight with all his might. Within the array, the two figures moved back and forth. In less than 10 breaths, the two had already exchanged more than 100 blows. They did not release any terrifying attacks and only relied on their iron fists. After the real battle, Xiao Qian realized that although the Tianfeng saint looked gentle and refined, his close combat ability was not weak at all. It could even be said to be heaven-defying. No wonder he could become a saint. He was indeed not easy to deal with. After a fierce battle, Xiao Qian finally hit the Tianfeng saint's face from afar. The Tianfeng saint also punched Xiao Qian's abdomen. The two figures flew out at the same time and then slammed into the golden light screen formed by the array and fell to the ground. It could be said to be the same as beating a drum. Xiao Qian stood up with a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. However, the battle intent on Xiao Qian's body grew stronger and stronger at this time. It was very satisfying to fight with the Tianfeng saint. The battle intent in his eyes grew stronger and stronger. At the same time, the Tianfeng saint also stood up with a look of admiration in his eyes as he smiled. Not bad. You're not bad at all. You're only one level lower than me, but you can still fight with me to this extent. Next is the last move. If you can use it, you'll pass. After the fierce battle, the Tianfeng saint also praised Xiao Qian. As soon as he finished speaking, the aura on the Tianfeng saint's body suddenly soared. A light blue spiritual power began to gather around Tianfeng saint. Then, Tianfeng saint slowly stretched out his right hand. Above his right hand, a seemingly slow palm strike shot out. Soon, a fierce gust of wind rushed toward Xiao Qian. This was the Tianfeng saint's last move. Of course, the power of this move was not to be underestimated. It was the famous martial skill of the Tianfeng saint when he was young, the green wind palm. The terrifying hurricane swept through the entire space, but it only took a moment for Xiao Qian to be swallowed up by the hurricane. Being in the middle of the hurricane, the surrounding winds were like blades, as if they were about to tear Xiao Qian into pieces. Tempered battle body. In the face of the Tianfeng saint's last move, Xiao Qian displayed the tempered battle body. The green wind palm was unavoidable. He could only take it head-on. Fortunately, Xiao Qian had the tempered battle body, so he was not too afraid. A golden light bloomed, blocking the fierce hurricane. After about 100 breaths, the hurricane slowly dissipated, and Xiao Qian appeared in front of the Tianfeng saint, unharmed. Seeing that his green wind palm did not hurt Xiao Qian at all, the young Tianfeng saint was stunned at first, but soon he laughed softly. Is this what it means to be better than the master? Not bad. You're much stronger than I was when I was young. You've passed. As he spoke, the image of the Tianfeng saint slowly dissipated, and the surrounding array also stopped operating at this moment. Xiao Qian had successfully passed the first fake sky platform. It was definitely a lucky thing for Xiao Qian to be able to fight against Saint Tianfeng, who was at the same age as him. Moreover, judging from the result of the battle, Xiao Qian's strength was slightly stronger than Saint Tianfeng's when he was younger. After all, Xiao Qian could be said to have fought against someone who was at a higher level than him. It should be known that Xiao Chen's current cultivation was only at the beginning of the Haotian realm. It was not easy to fight with a saint at the same age as him, and it was naturally more difficult to fight with someone who was at a higher level than him. Xiao Chen let out a breath and was about to continue climbing the fake sky platform, but Xiao Xing, who was one step ahead of him, reminded him, "Boy, do you want to die? Don't you want to rest after such a big battle? Do you think you can pass the second fake sky platform in your current state?" Xiao Chen wanted to continue climbing the fake sky platform, but after being scolded by Xiao Xing, Xiao Chen came back to his senses. He immediately sat cross-legged on the ground and began to recover his spiritual power. Don't laugh at the fake sky platform. You must be in your peak state at all times. Otherwise, you won't be able to pass the fake sky platform. During the fake sky platform assessment, there was plenty of time, so Xiao Chen had plenty of time to adjust his state. According to Xiao Xing, Xiao Chen used a full hour to adjust his state before continuing to climb the fake sky platform. He had successfully passed the first fake sky platform, and there were 5 left. Xiao Xing would help him pass the last fake sky platform, but Xiao Chen had to rely on his own strength to pass the last fake sky platform. If Xiao Chen couldn't reach the last fake sky platform, he could only end up failing. Just as Xiao Chen continued to rush to the second fake sky platform, Saint Tianfeng and the other 3 people who had been waiting in the Holy Palace all had doubts on their faces. Xiao Chen has been in the fake sky platform world for almost half a day, right? Logically speaking, he should have passed the first fake sky platform, but why hasn't he come out yet? Saint Kuangli was the first to speak. Saint Qingju, who was beside Saint Kuangli, smiled and said, "Did this boy pass the first fake sky platform? That's impossible. Although Xiao Chen's talent is top-notch, he's too young. His cultivation level is too low. How could he pass the first fake sky platform?" Saint Tianfeng was also puzzled when he heard Saint Qingju's words. "Don't worry, let's wait and see. Anyway, this boy will come out soon. Even if he passes the first fake sky platform, he definitely won't be able to pass the second one," Saint Huiyun said with a smile. Originally, Saint Tianfeng and the others thought that Xiao Chen wouldn't be able to pass the first fake sky platform, but now it seemed that there were some changes in the situation. Of course, Saint Huiyun was right. Even if Xiao Chen passed the first fake sky platform, he definitely wouldn't be able to pass the second one. However, if Xiao Chen really passed the first fake sky platform, wouldn't it prove that Xiao Chen's true strength was above their expectations? They had underestimated Xiao Chen. As time passed, the 4 saints began to become curious. They originally thought that Xiao Chen would fail soon, but now their mood had changed a little. They wanted to see if Xiao Chen would give them a surprise in the end. Begging for a monthly vote, begging for a recommendation. End of chapter. Chapter 731. The Tianfeng saint and the others were secretly looking forward to the surprise Xiao Chen would bring them. Xiao Chen naturally didn't know about this. At this time, Xiao Chen was thinking about the second fake Tiantai. Compared to the first fake Tiantai, the pressure of the second fake Tiantai was even greater. With every step, Xiao Chen felt as if he was carrying a mountain on his back. He kept silent and kept his head down. After a long time, Xiao Chen finally arrived at the second fake Tiantai. It was the same design. When Xiao Chen stepped on the second fake Tiantai, the array was activated and the surrounding space was sealed. At the same time, the image of a young saint appeared. Xiao Chen didn't know this saint, but he had seen a statue of this saint in the Saint Gallery of the Saint Palace. It seemed to be a saint from a long time ago. He should have died long ago. It was a saint who had already passed away, and Xiao Chen was able to meet this saint thanks to the power of the fake celestial stairway. The two looked at each other. The saint looked at Xiao Chen and said calmly, "You're at the initial stage of the Tao Gate realm. You can pass the first fake Tiantai. Your strength is not bad. Let's fight. If you defeat me, you can continue to move forward. Otherwise, go back to where you came from. The saint's personality was obviously very cold. He didn't say a word of nonsense and directly asked for a fight. At the same time, without waiting for Xiao Chen to reply, the saint took the initiative to attack. A large saber appeared in his hand, and he went all out. Seeing this, Xiao Chen naturally didn't dare to be careless. The storage ring in his hand flashed, and the ink dragon sword instantly appeared in his hand. The saber and the sword collided, and the two immediately engaged in a fierce battle. The saint's saber technique was composed of domineering power. There was no technique involved. Every move could be said to be very simple. However, such a simple saber technique greatly increased the pressure on Xiao Chen. There was nothing fancy about it. It was the most direct way to defeat 10 people with strength. While fighting fiercely, Xiao Chen secretly complained, "What a fierce saber technique!" In the blink of an eye, the two of them had exchanged hundreds of blows. Gradually, Xiao Chen became familiar with the saint's saber technique. With a soft cry, he unleashed the square heaven sword shadow. Choosing not to meet force with force, Xiao Chen's sword moved nimbly, dodging this saint's attacks while using the square heaven sword shadow to attack this saint. Not bad. You know how to play to your strengths and avoid your weaknesses. Now, can you take this strike of mine? The saint praised Xiao Chen expressionlessly. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the large blade in his hand blossomed with a fiery red spiritual light. Saber slash! He shouted in a deep voice and slashed out with his blade. This blade seemed to be burning with flames descending from the sky and directly locking onto Xiao Chen. The infinitely magnified blade light directly sealed off all of Xiao Chen's escape route. In the face of this saint's powerful attack, Xiao Chen knew that he could no longer avoid it. He could only meet force with force. He tightly gripped the ink dragon sword in his hands and fiercely slashed out. The square heaven sword shadow condensed into a sword edge and fiercely collided with the saint's blade light. When the two collided, a terrifying aftershock spread out in all directions. Xiao Chen's figure was directly sent flying by the aftershock. He spat out a large mouthful of blood as his body slammed into the array's golden light screen. After a full 10 breaths, the aftershock slowly dissipated. Xiao Chen and the saint stood facing each other and did not attack again. The saint looked at Xiao Chen and said indifferently, "Not bad." Then, he slowly dissipated. In the final head-on collision, Xiao Chen was actually at a disadvantage. However, the saint's image still acknowledged Xiao Chen. Therefore, Xiao Chen had successfully passed the second fake rooftop. Seeing the saint's image slowly disappear, Xiao Chen sighed helplessly. Xiao Xing spoke at the right time. "How is it, kid? Have you realized your shortcomings?" "Yes." Hearing Xiao Xing's words, Xiao Chen nodded. Then, he sat down and began to adjust his breathing. After the battle with the saint, Xiao Chen had indeed realized that he was not strong enough. In fact, on the surface, Xiao Chen's current attack methods were not few. However, there was a big problem. Xiao Chen did not have any sword moves that he could use to meet force with force. For example, the square heaven sword shadow, tiger gallop, Ganjiang finger sword, and so on. Although these moves were not weak, they were not suitable for a head-on collision. The square heaven sword shadow was a sword move that killed a group of people. It was not very lethal to a single target. Tiger gallop was needless to say, it was a movement technique. As for Ganjiang finger sword, although it was a move that killed a single target, it was only suitable for a killing blow. It was not suitable for a head-on collision. In other words, if Xiao Chen was forced to a dead end and the two sides were about to fight head-on, Xiao Chen did not have any sword moves that he could use. Moves that used brute force against brute force were definitely known for their ferocity. Brute force could take down 10, just like the saint's final strike from before. After realizing his weakness, Xiao Chen also knew that he really had to find a fierce sword technique in the future to make up for this shortcoming. After teasing the second fake Tiantai for more than 2 hours, Xiao Chen recovered. Then he stepped on the fake heavenly stairs again, and moved on to the third fake Tiantai. The pressure increased again. On the way to the third fake Tiantai, another saint's image appeared. This battle was obviously more difficult than the previous one. After suffering serious injuries, Xiao Chen finally succeeded. He had already passed 3 fake Tiantai. However, he still had to rely on his own strength to pass the next 2 fake Tiantai. As he went on, the saints' images that appeared on the fake Tiantai were stronger and more difficult. However, it was undeniable that after fighting with these saints, Xiao Chen was also constantly improving. At the same time, some of his shortcomings were gradually highlighted. As the battle continued, Xiao Chen became more and more aware of his shortcomings and advantages. At the same time, he also learned how powerful these saints were when they were young. It took Xiao Chen 4 hours to recover on the third fake Tiantai. After that, it took him 6 hours to pass the 4th fake Tiantai. There were only 2 fake Tiantai left. Xiao Chen only needed to pass the 5th fake Tiantai with his own strength. As for the 6th fake Tiantai, he could only rely on Xiao Xing's strength. Is this the last fake Tiantai? After standing up on the 4th fake Tiantai, Xiao Chen looked at the endless stairway and murmured softly. As Xiao Chen murmured, Xiao Xing chuckled. Boy, the 5th fake Tiantai is the real test for you. If you can't break through the limit of this fake Tiantai, I'm afraid you won't be able to pass it. Come on, pass the last fake Tiantai, and your mission will be completed. Please add me to your collection, monthly vote, recommend me. Chapter 732. Xiao Xing's words gave Xiao Chen a bad feeling. At the same time, he could vaguely guess what was going on. Xiao Chen had passed 4 fake roofs in a row. He could feel that the difficulty of the fake roofs was getting higher and higher. When Xiao Chen reached the 4th fake roofs, the saint's shadow was already at the small perfection stage of the Tao Gate realm. In order to pass the 4th fake Tiantai, Xiao Chen had tried his best, but in the end, he still couldn't defeat the saint. It was only because the saint approved of him that he passed. In order to pass the 4th fake roofs, Xiao Chen had used all his means. How was Xiao Chen going to pass the 5th fake roofs? Perhaps it was just like what Xiao Xing said. Only by breaking through the limit could one pass the 5th stage. Otherwise, there should be no hope. Looking at the stairway in front of him silently, Xiao Xing saw that Xiao Chen didn't reply. He chuckled and said, "Why? Don't you have confidence? Actually, it's okay if you want to give up. It's not easy for you to reach this stage at your age. Ancestor, you must be joking. We've already come this far. How can I give up? Anyway, I'm only 1 step away from my mission. As long as I pass the 5th stage, the rest is up to you, Ancestor." Xiao Chen chuckled when he heard Xiao Xing's words. No matter what the 5th stage was, Xiao Chen had no reason to back down. Xiao Chen stepped on the stairway. However, as soon as he stepped on the stairway, Xiao Chen almost fell to his knees. This pressure was simply, Xiao Chen gritted his teeth and slowly stabilized his body. After adapting to the terrifying pressure for a while, he began to continue climbing. The pressure on the way to the 5th fake rooftop was indeed terrifying. When Xiao Chen finally arrived at the 5th fake rooftop, he was already sweating profusely. It was as if he had just taken a shower. His clothes were so wet that water could be wrung out. Xiao Chen was extremely tired, but he obviously didn't have time to rest. When Xiao Chen stepped on the 5th fake roofs, the formation was activated. Then, the space was sealed, and the image of a saint appeared in front of Xiao Chen. Looking at the saint before him, he had the appearance of a young man with a simple long sword on his back. His appearance was ordinary, but his eyes were extremely sharp and gave off an indescribable feeling of oppression. Xiao Chen didn't pay much attention to the saint's appearance. He just glanced at him. What made Xiao Chen feel helpless was the cultivation realm of the saint. After sensing it secretly, Xiao Chen smiled bitterly and said, "As expected, the perfect stage of the Tao Gate realm. The saint's cultivation realm was set at the perfect stage of the Tao Gate realm, which made Xiao Qin feel a little speechless. Originally, it was not a big deal for Xiao Qin to challenge someone at a higher level, but it also depended on the opponent. Xiao Qin's opponents were all saints when they were young. How could ordinary warriors compare with them? Xiao Qin could fight someone at a higher level, and these saints could also fight someone at a higher level when they were young. Moreover, Xiao Qin's cultivation was only at the entry stage of the Tao Gate realm, but the saint's cultivation was at the perfect stage of the Tao Gate realm. There was a gap of 4 small levels between them. How could he fight? No wonder Xiao Xing said that he could only pass this stage if he broke through his limit. It seemed that it was true. As if he sensed the bitterness in Xiao Qin's heart, Xiao Xing smiled gloatingly and said, "How about it, boy? Do you want to give up? If you can't break through your limit, you won't be able to pass this 5th fake sky platform." There was no danger to his life in this fake sky platform world, so Xiao Xing was not worried at all. Hearing this, Xiao Qin shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "Forget about giving up. I've already come this far. No matter what, I have to fight first." As he spoke, Xiao Qin had already unsheathed the ink dragon sword in his hand. Seeing this, the saint standing opposite Xiao Qin also said indifferently, "It's really surprising that someone at the entry stage of the Tao Gate realm can make it here. It seems that you won't listen to me when I tell you to give up, right?" "Yes, it wasn't easy for me to get here. Even if I fail, I have to give it a try," Xiao Qin replied. Hearing this, the saint pondered for a moment, then slowly pulled out the long sword on his back and said softly, "Give it a try? Then come on, Junior. Let me see how good your sword Dao is." He gestured for Xiao Qin to make the first move. Hearing this, Xiao Qin naturally wouldn't be polite. He immediately slashed out with his sword, and the blade slashed out rapidly towards the saint. However, in the face of Xiao Qin's sword, the saint simply raised his Jian Yi and neutralized Xiao Qin's attack. Xiao Qin was not surprised that the saint was able to easily nullify his attack. He did not stop at all. He performed the stampede of the tiger and the tempered battle form. Under the illumination of the golden light, Xiao Qin leaped up and immediately engaged the saint in battle. Both of them were sword cultivators. Their 2 long swords constantly emitted the sound of metal colliding, and their figures crisscrossed in the array. As they clashed, Xiao Qin was quickly suppressed. However, with the tempered battle body and his comprehension of the sword Dao, Xiao Qin bitterly held on. As if he didn't want to end the battle too quickly, the saint suppressed Xiao Qin, but he didn't give Xiao Qin the final blow. The saint said indifferently as they fought, "Not bad. Your way of the sword is actually no weaker than mine at the same time. It's just a pity that your cultivation isn't enough. Just this aspect alone is enough for me to firmly suppress you. You should know that in a battle between experts, the slightest weakness will be magnified infinitely. As a result, you have no chance of winning against me with your insufficient cultivation," said the saint. The saint said indifferently. The fact was indeed so. The huge gap in cultivation made Xiao Qin unable to turn the tables. However, what surprised Xiao Qin was that the saint didn't seem to want to defeat him. In fact, he could have defeated him with a single strike during the battle, but he didn't do so. Although it was a battle, Xiao Qin felt that the saint was forcing him, teaching him, and constantly pushing him to his limit. It was under this feeling that the battle between Xiao Qin and the saint was infinitely prolonged. He didn't know how much time had passed, and he didn't know how long the battle had been going on for. Just when Xiao Qin was extremely exhausted and his body was about to fall apart, a muffled sound came from his body. The barrier of the initial success of the Tao Gate realm was directly broken. He had broken through. Even Xiao Qin himself didn't expect that he would break through to the initial success of the Tao Gate realm at this time. Suddenly, Xiao Qin thought of Xiao Xing's words. Breaking through the limit. Was this breaking through the limit? Breaking through in battle. begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 733. Xiao Chun had a breakthrough in his cultivation during the battle. Along with the breakthrough in his cultivation, his aura also soared all the way. Soon, he reached the small success stage of the Tao Gate realm, but it was accompanied by an incomparable sense of hunger. This sense of hunger was not because he wanted to eat, but because he longed for spiritual power. After all, after fighting for so long, Xiao Chen's spiritual power had long been depleted. Now that he had a breakthrough in his cultivation, his thirst for spiritual power was even more difficult to suppress. Under the urging of such intense hunger, Xiao Chen did not care about anything else. He directly sat down cross-legged, took out a pill to replenish his spiritual power, and swallowed it in one gulp. As the pill entered his body, pure spiritual power melted in Xiao Chen's body. It was like rain after a long drought. An indescribable feeling of comfort quickly spread in Xiao Chen's heart. Seeing that Xiao Chen had taken a seat, the fifth pseudo-heavenly platform's saint image did not attack again. In fact, many people did not understand what the criteria for the quasi-saint and saint assessment were. Was it to defeat the images of these saints? It could be said that it was, but it was not correct. The images of the saints condensed by the formation actually had some of their own thoughts under the influence of the formation and the power of law of the pseudo-heaven stairway world. Therefore, whether one could pass or not did not necessarily mean that one had to defeat them. One only needed to obtain their approval. Just like now, the saint did not attack again. Instead, he quietly waited for Xiao Chen to stabilize his cultivation. After 3 hours, Xiao Chen slowly opened his eyes. When he saw the saint standing in front of him with his hands behind his back, Xiao Chen stood up and bowed to thank him. "Thank you, Senior." He knew very well that his breakthrough this time was entirely due to the help of this saint. From the beginning until now, this saint had been constantly pushing his limit. It was under extreme pressure that Xiao Chen could break through. In the face of Xiao Chen's gratitude, the saint said indifferently, "You don't have to thank me. This is your own talent. If you had not broken through, I would have had to defeat you with my sword." The saint's assessment for Xiao Chen was to force Xiao Chen to break through. If Xiao Chen had not broken through under such circumstances, then Xiao Chen would definitely not have been able to pass the fifth pseudo-heavenly platform. Now that Xiao Chen had succeeded in breaking through, he had received the saint's approval. As his voice fell, the saint paused as if he was thinking about something, then he continued, "However, even if I let you pass the fifth pseudo-heavenly platform, you will not be able to pass the sixth pseudo-heavenly platform. If you want our approval, at least, you have to have your own ability. If you are defeated in one with my sword." The saint was very direct. Even if Xiao Chen broke through the fifth pseudo-heavenly platform, Xiao Chen would definitely not be able to pass the sixth pseudo-heavenly platform. Xiao Chen did not quibble. However, the sixth pseudo-heavenly platform was no longer his problem. Whether he could pass it or not depended on Xiao Xing. Therefore, Xiao Chen did not mind at all. "Thank you, but I'm still saying the same thing. Since we're already here, how can I back down?" "That's true. In that case, you can go and experience it." After hearing Xiao Chen's words, the saint thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. After that, the saint's image slowly dissipated and the formation around them stopped operating. Xiao Chen had finally passed the fifth pseudo-heavenly platform. The continuous fierce battles had made Xiao Chen tense up. At this moment, he could finally relax and a smile appeared on his face. "Ancestor, it's up to you now. Of course. Since you've already come this far, how can I not help you become the prospective holy son?" Xiao Xing replied with a smile when he heard Xiao Chen's words. Passing the first 5 pseudo-heavenly platforms was already Xiao Chen's limit. After that, Xiao Xing took control of Xiao Chen's body. This time, Xiao Chen handed over control of his body to Xiao Xing. Moreover, because of the heavenly spiritual pool, Xiao Xing did not consume too much energy to control Xiao Chen's body this time. At least, it would not hurt his foundation. After Xiao Xing successfully took control of his body, Xiao Chen's qi began to rise. Soon, he rose from the initial Taoist realm to the initial Taoist realm. Then, Xiao Xing took a step forward and instantly stepped on the stairway to the sixth pseudo-heavenly platform. He walked towards the last pseudo-heavenly platform with light step. With Xiao Xing's help, Xiao Qin was naturally very relaxed. He watched the development of the situation like a bystander. It could be said that he ran all the way. Not long after, Xiao Xing arrived at the sixth pseudo-heavenly platform. This was the end of the pseudo-heavenly platform. There was only a circular platform floating in the darkness. With Xiao Xing's arrival, the array of the 6 pseudo-heavenly platforms was activated. Then a saint appeared. This was the final test of the pseudo-heavenly stairway world. The cultivation of this saint was set at the initial Taoist realm. No wonder Xiao Xing said that Xiao Qin could not pass the 6th pseudo-heavenly platform. It was indeed so. With such a huge gap in cultivation, this was no longer something that could be changed by hard work or breakthroughs. Their eyes met, and the saint spoke first. "No one has been here for a long time. Come, let me see if you are qualified to pass this pseudo-heavenly stairway." Xiao Xing smiled when he heard the saint's words. He didn't say anything else as he took a step forward and immediately engaged in battle with the saint. He was reduced to a mere spectator. This time, the strength that Xiao Xing displayed truly shocked Xiao Qin. Although Xiao Xing's cultivation was only at the beginning of the Tao transformation realm, he was able to defeat a saint of the same cultivation level as him without much effort. No wonder he was known as the strongest saint in the Tianhe continent. After easily defeating the saint of the 6th pseudo-heavenly platform, Xiao Xing returned control of the body to Xiao Qin. At this point, Xiao Qin finally passed the pseudo-heavenly stairway and the assessment of the prospective Holy Son. "Kid, the test this time is too much of an exaggeration. With your strength, I'm afraid there's still a big gap between you and the other prospective Holy Sons of the ancient Holy Sect. So, you can't relax in the future. The prospective Holy Sons have a lot of cultivation resources, so you have to work harder," Xiao Xing reminded with a smile. "Ancestor, don't worry. I know this better than anyone else," Xiao Qin replied. At the same time that Xiao Qin passed the pseudo-heavenly stairway, in the outside world, in the sky of the ancient sacred sect, a ray of light descended from the sky. With the appearance of this ray of light, the entire ancient sacred sect was shaken. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the sky, and their faces were filled with shock. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 734. This was the tradition of the ancient sacred sect. Whenever a new direct disciple, prospective Holy Son, or saint appeared, the sky above the ancient sacred sect would be filled with multicolored light. It was like a heavenly river that spread to every corner of the ancient sacred sect. Countless disciples stared at the sky, and someone couldn't help but whisper, "3 colored rays of light represent the appearance of a new direct disciple, 5 colored rays of light represent the prospective Holy Child, 7 colored rays of light represent the Holy Child, and 9 colored rays of light represent the Holy Child. This is 5 colored rays of light. Could it be that a prospective Holy Child has appeared? A new Holy Son? Could it be Xiao Qin? He's the only one who went to the fake heavenly stairs, right?" Many disciples whispered. Not only them, but even the Tianfeng saint and the other 3 shrines were stunned. It took them a while to come back to their senses. Saint Kuangli said in disbelief, "This is a 5-colored rainbow. Did Xiao Qin pass the fake heavenly stairs?" The 4 of them were the ones who knew the most about this matter. They also knew that Xiao Qin was the only one who was challenging the fake heavenly stairway. Now that the 5-colored light had appeared, there was only one explanation. That was, Shao Chun had successfully passed the fake heavenly stairway and was now one of the prospective holy sons of the ancient sacred sect. The four saints didn't think highly of Shao Chun. After all, Shao Chun's cultivation was too low. At first, the four saints thought that Shao Chun couldn't even pass the first fake heavenly stairs. Later, they thought that Shao Chun would give them a surprise. But now, this surprise was too big. Passing the fake heavenly stairs? What kind of change was this? Shao Chun's cultivation was only at the initial Tao Gate realm. How did he pass the fake heavenly stairs? How was he going to get past the sixth fake Tiantai? Hearing Saint Kuang Li's words, the Tianfeng saint and the other two saints were silent. Their eyes were filled with shock. After a while, Saint Qing Ju recovered and said indifferently, "This kid is really troublesome. Now it seems that he passed the fake heavenly stairs. Let's go and pick him up. We'll ask him then." Hearing Saint Qing Ju's words, Saint Tianfeng and Saint Huiyuan both nodded. Then, the four saints disappeared from the sacred palace and appeared at the entrance of the Myriad World Palace. Not long after the four saints appeared, the door of the Myriad World Palace opened, and Shao Chun walked out slowly. Seeing Shao Chun's appearance, Saint Kuang Li, who was the most impatient, couldn't help but ask. Stepping in front of Shao Chun, Saint Kuang Li squeezed Shao Chun's shoulders with both hands and asked in surprise, "Boy, did you really pass the fake celestial stairway?" It was too shocking. Facing such an excited Saint Kuang Li, Shao Chun didn't even have time to reply. Perhaps because he was too excited, Saint Kuang Li didn't pay attention to the strength of his hands. He directly squeezed Shao Chun's shoulders until they hurt. Enduring the pain, Shao Chun said speechlessly, Lord Saint, can you let me go first? If this goes on, I'll be killed by you." How could Shao Chun withstand the power of a saint? Saint Kuang Li came back to his senses and hurriedly let go of Shao Chun. However, his eyes were still fixed on Shao Chun, waiting for his reply. Not only Saint Kuang Li, but Saint Tianfeng, Saint Qingju, and Saint Huiyuan were also the same. Facing the gazes of the four saints, Shao Chun knew why they were so shocked. After all, it was indeed unreasonable for him to pass the quasi-heaven stairway with his cultivation. But now there was no other choice. Shao Chun could only brace himself and do it. Lord Saint, it is indeed me who passed the quasi-heaven stairway. Yes, we know it's you. But your cultivation is only at the Tao Gate realm. How is it possible? No, wait, you broke through? Tianfeng Saint said after hearing Shao Chun's words. However, he suddenly realized that Shao Chun's cultivation level was no longer at the initial level of the Tao Gate realm. Instead, it was at the initial level of the Tao Gate realm. This kid had actually made a breakthrough on the quasi-sky stairway. The shock in his eyes became even more intense. This brat actually had a breakthrough in his cultivation. Shao Chun shocked the four saints again and again. Finally, under the lead of the four saints, Shao Chun once again arrived at the sacred hall and briefly explained the process of him passing the quasi-heaven stairway to the four saints. Of course, Shao Chun didn't say a word about Shao Xing. Although Saint Tianfeng knew about Shao Xing's existence, he obviously didn't think too much about it. After a simple explanation, although the four saints were still filled with surprise, the result was already as such. Shao Chun had passed the quasi-heaven stairway. This was an undeniable fact. And according to the rules of the ancient saint sect, Shao Chun's age, Tao Gate, and other aspects also met the requirements to become a candidate. Therefore, Shao Chun was already a sure thing. After calming himself down, Saint Qingju finally looked at Shao Chun and said, "Since you have passed the quasi-heaven stairway, no matter what method you used, it is your ability. From this, it can be seen that you are indeed capable. In this case, there will naturally be a place for you as the candidate of the ancient saint sect. How about this? 3 days later, we will hold the conferring ceremony for you. You can rest for the next few days." He no longer cared about how Shao Chun had passed the quasi-heaven stairway. In any case, Xiao Chun had passed it. Hearing Saint Qingjue's words, Xiao Chun nodded and agreed. Subsequently, Saint Tianfeng personally sent Xiao Chun back to his residence. As for Xiao Chun's future residence, it would be decided after the conferring ceremony. Of course, Xiao Chun did not care too much about these trivial matters. After settling Xiao Chun, Saint Tianfeng returned to the Saint Palace. At this time, there were not only the voices of Saint Tianfeng and the other 3 saints in the Saint Palace. On the 16 praying mats, there were figures sitting cross-legged. Of course, other than Saint Tianfeng and the other 3 saints, the figures of the other saints were somewhat illusory. Clearly, they did not come in person, but were merely shadows. All the saints gathered in the hall once again. One of the saints said, "Who would have thought that our ancient saint sect would have another quasi-saint? Since that's the case, let's follow the procedure. Qingju, this time the 4 of you are in charge." All the saints had gathered for Xiao Chun's matter. After all, the conferring of a quasi-saint required the agreement of all the saints. Saint Qingju nodded slightly when he heard this saint's words. He then took out the video of Xiao Chun testing the gate of Tao for all the saints to see and briefly introduced Xiao Chun. After watching the video and listening to Saint Qingjue's explanation, all the saints nodded slightly. There was no problem with the entire process. As such, Xiao Chun's position as the quasi-saint was naturally not to be doubted. Very quickly, the 16 saints of the ancient saint sect unanimously agreed that Xiao Chun would be the 5th quasi-saint. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 735. The 16 saints unanimously agreed that Xiao Chun would become the 5th quasi-holy son of the ancient saint sect. After voting, all the saints looked at the phantom in the middle. Unlike the other saints, this phantom was shrouded in a white light, and his appearance couldn't be seen clearly. However, it wasn't difficult to see from the expressions of the saints that they all respected this person very much. And this was also reasonable, because this saint whose appearance couldn't be seen clearly was the ancestor of the ancient saint sect. He was an old monster who had lived for countless years and was known as one of the oldest saints in the Tianhe continent. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that at least half of the remaining 15 saints present were this old man's disciples. Saints could live for a very long time, and the gap in strength between saints was obviously very large. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that old monsters like the ancestor of the ancient saint sect had already reached the end of the saint realm. As long as they had the source energy, these old monsters could break through to the quasi-saint realm in an instant. Of course, there was no source energy in the Tianhe continent, so even these old monsters had no way to break through to the quasi-saint realm. His name was Randang Kozii. Facing the gazes of all the saints, a majestic voice came out from Randang Kozii's mouth. In 3 days, Xiao Chun's conferring ceremony will be held. Qingju, Tianfeng, Huiyun, and Kuangli, the 4 of you will be in charge. We will follow Master's orders. Hearing Randang Kozii's words, Saint Qingju and the other 3 respectfully replied. After saying that, Randang Kozii's phantom took the lead and disappeared into the shrines. Then, the saints chatted for a while and left one after another. Soon, only Saint Qingju and the other 3 were left in the shrines. The matter was finally settled. On the same day, Saint Qingju announced that Xiao Chun would be the 5th quasi-holy son of the ancient saint sect. As soon as this news came out, it naturally caused an uproar in the ancient saint sect. Countless holy sons and deacons of the ancient saint sect were discussing Xiao Chun. In less than half a day, Xiao Chun's past deeds were dug out by everyone, including Xiao Chun's past in the Moonless Empire. One must not underestimate these disciples of the ancient saint sect. To be able to enter the ancient saint sect, none of them were ordinary characters. There were no more than 10,000 disciples in the entire ancient saint sect. Compared to Tianfeng Xingzong and other outer sects, the number of disciples in the ancient saint sect was very small. This was also the philosophy of the ancient saint sect all this while. Taking the business route, they would invest their limited resources on a small number of people and nurture a single powerful being. In the eyes of the ancient saint sect, it was definitely more cost-effective than nurturing 10 or even 100 mediocre people. Therefore, the ancient saint sect had always been strict in recruiting disciples. As a result, there were only 10,000 disciples in the ancient saint sect. Many disciples were discussing Shao Chen curiously. Being the fifth candidate of the chosen saint was definitely a meteoric rise. Some people were envious while others were jealous. After all, Shao Chen had just entered the ancient saint sect. However, he had directly become the chosen saint. This made many of the older disciples feel that it was unfair. In addition, someone had spread the news that Shao Chen was only in the Dao Gate realm. It was simply a joke that a Dao Gate realm martial artist could become the fifth candidate of the ancient saint sect. It was precisely because of this imbalance that some disciples began to question the decision of the sect. Of course, they did not dare to go against the decision of the saints. As such, they could only vent their jealousy and anger on Shao Chen. Some people were envious, some people worshipped, and some people were jealous. For a time, there were all kinds of rumors about Shao Chen in the ancient saint sect. Some people said that Shao Chen was indeed a genius. Some people said that Shao Chen was just lucky. There were even people who said that Shao Chen had cheated in passing the quasi-heavenly stairway. The saints should revoke Shao Chen's position as the fifth candidate of the chosen saint. There were many different opinions. However, no matter how these disciples discussed, Shao Chen's position as the fifth candidate of the chosen saint was not affected at all. 3 days passed in a flash. On this day, Shao Chen began his own chosen saint's coronation hall in the ancient saint sect's sacred palace. Countless disciples gathered outside the sacred palace. They were not qualified to enter the sacred palace. They waited anxiously. Not long after, Shao Chen appeared in front of everyone under the lead of a half-saint deacon. Shao Chen's appearance naturally attracted the attention of all the disciples. Everyone began to discuss softly. Although their voices were soft, Shao Chen still heard them. Among them, many people were hostile to him because of jealousy. Shao Chen did not comment on this, nor did he have the intention to pay attention to them. These guys did not have the ability to become the chosen saint, so they thought that others could not. Therefore, these people began to slander him without any bottom line. They said that he had cheated, that he was lucky, that he had used some unspeakable means. All kinds of rumors spread from the disciples' mouth. Shao Chen guessed that there might be many people who would find trouble with him in the future. However, he did not care. Shao Chen only wanted strength. As for other things, he did not care. Under the lead of the half-saint deacon, Shao Chen came all the way to the sacred palace. Today, the sacred palace was very lively. The 16 saints of the ancient saint sect had gathered. Of course, except for Saint Qingju and the other 3, the other saints were just shadows. Apart from the saints, the other 4 saints of the ancient saint sect, as well as the 4 chosen saints, as long as they were in the ancient saint sect, were all present. Chen Yu and Hu Fei were the sons, and there were also 2 prospective sons present. Shao Chen nodded slightly at Chen Yu. He came to the center of the sacred hall and bowed to all the saints. Saint Qingjue then said plainly, "Disciple Shao Chen has condensed the 8-edged Dao Gate and successfully passed the quasi-sky stairway. As a result, Shao Chen is specially conferred the position of chosen saint of the ancient saint sect. From today onwards, Shao Chen is the 5th chosen saint of the ancient saint sect. He will be given a heavenly ancient robe and a chosen saint cave dwelling. He will choose a day to choose the 4 saint palaces." Saint Qingju said slowly. As soon as he finished speaking, 2 half-saint deacons arrived before Shao Chen with a heavenly ancient robe and a chosen saint medallion. The heavenly ancient robe was a quasi-saint defensive soul treasure. It was very powerful, and cultivators below the Dao King realm would not be able to harm Shao Chen at all once he wore it. Of course, this was because Xiao Chen's cultivation was not enough. If Xiao Chen's cultivation could break through again, the heavenly ancient robe would allow Xiao Chen to block all attacks below the half-saint realm. Every single heavenly ancient robe was a peerless treasure. The ancient saints sect had spent a great deal of effort to forge it. Since ancient times, only chosen saints could wear it. Of course, compared to the chosen saint's primordial robe, the heavenly ancient robe was naturally slightly inferior. However, to Xiao Chen, a quasi-saint defensive soul treasure was already a very heaven-defying treasure. Begging for a monthly vote, begging for a recommendation. Chapter 736. After receiving the ancient heavenly robe and prospective Holy Sun token from the two half-saint deacons, the two half-saint deacons did not leave. Instead, they stood behind Xiao Chen respectfully. Xiao Chen was a little curious about the two half-saint deacons' actions, but it was not appropriate for him to ask. After all, there were 16 saints in front of him. Even Xiao Chen could not help but feel a great pressure. After receiving the ancient heavenly robe and prospective Holy Sun token, there were naturally many other rewards, but they were nothing more than some elixirs, martial skills, and the like. Needless to say, there were all kinds of elixirs. There were more than 20 bottles, and there was even a marrow-cleansing saint elixir, which made Xiao Chen overjoyed. In addition to the elixirs, Xiao Chen also had a chance to go to the Martial Skills Hall to pick a heaven-level upper martial skill for free. Of course, in addition to these rewards, Xiao Chen could also receive a considerable amount of cultivation resources from the ancient sacred sect every month in the future. After hearing about the treatment of the prospective Holy Sun from St. Qingju, Xiao Chen could not help but be stunned. This treatment was simply heaven-defying. Let's put it this way, a Holy Sun's monthly salary was equivalent to 10 personal disciples, which was equivalent to 1,000 ordinary disciples. And this was the disciples of the ancient saints sect. One must know that even the ordinary disciples of the ancient saints sect were not given any special treatment, but a Holy Sun's salary was equivalent to the sum of 1,000 ordinary disciples. The difference between the two could be imagined. At this moment, Xiao Chen sincerely felt that it was not a loss for him to obtain the position of prospective Holy Sun calmly and with all his might. Just as Xiao Chen was receiving the rewards, the other two prospective Holy Suns beside him were also discussing with spiritual power. This kid is really lucky. He became a prospective Holy Sun as soon as he entered the ancient sacred sect. He is on equal footing with us. Oh, it's nothing more than a moment of luck. His cultivation is only in the Tao Gate realm. How can he be on equal footing with us? That's true. Let's see if he is sensible. If he doesn't know the rules, I don't recommend teaching him personally. Don't think that you can be on equal footing with us just because you have become the 5th prospective Holy Sun. It was not difficult to tell from the words of the two prospective Holy Suns that they actually looked down on Xiao Chen. Of course, it was not just the two Holy Suns who were not present. Because Xiao Chen's cultivation was too low, in their opinion, Xiao was not worthy of being on equal footing with them. In their opinion, Xiao Chen was not worthy of being on equal footing with them. Compared to the two prospective Holy Suns, Chen Yu and Hu Fei appeared to be very calm. The two of them did not have any hostility towards Xiao Chen. They both agreed that Xiao Chen had become the 5th prospective Holy Sun. Of course, Hu Fei also had a trace of battle intent in his heart. He wanted to fight Xiao Chen. Of course, this battle intent was not directed at Xiao Chen now, but in the future. Once Xiao Chen became a Holy Sun. He had already made up his mind to fight Xiao Chen when he became a Holy Sun in the future. No matter what, he would fight Xiao Chen. The coronation ceremony was not troublesome. It ended in less than an hour. Afterwards, Xiao Chen returned to his residence. After choosing his sacred palace in the future, he would officially become the 5th prospective Holy Sun of the ancient sacred sect. After bidding farewell to the saints and leaving the sacred hall, Xiao Chen returned to his residence. However, to Xiao Chen's surprise, the two half-saint attendants from before did not leave. Instead, they followed Xiao Chen all the way back. After entering the courtyard, Xiao Chen turned to the two attendants and said, "Thank you, seniors, for seeing me off. I've arrived. You're too polite, prospective Holy Son. From today onwards, the two of us belong to the prospective Holy Son. We'll follow your orders," the two attendants replied respectfully when they heard Xiao Chen's words. His own people? Two half-saints? Xiao Chen was stunned when he heard the two attendants' words. Seeing this, the two of them began to patiently explain. The two attendants explained that they were old men who were close to 70 years old. Their faces were covered in wrinkles, but one of them still had a head of black hair, while the other had a head of white hair. According to them, the black-haired old man was called He Yen, and the white-haired old man was called Bai Qi. The two of them could be considered Xiao Chen's personal guards. According to the rules of the ancient sacred sect, once one became a prospective Holy Son, they could have two half-saints as personal guards. On one hand, they could protect themselves, and on the other hand, it was a symbol of status and authority. As mentioned before, the Holy Son and prospective Holy Son of the ancient sacred sect were different from the personal disciples. They held real power in their hands, and having half-saints following them was a manifestation of real power. He Yen and Bai Qi had the status of half-saint attendants in the ancient sacred sect, but from today onwards, the two of them would only listen to Xiao Chen's orders. After hearing the two's explanation, Xiao Chen said in a daze, "Elder He, Elder Master Bai, they were half-saints." In the blink of an eye, two half-saints had taken orders from him. This made Xiao Chen feel somewhat at a loss. When he thought about it, the rulers of the heavenly Qin continent were only almighty Tao emperors. Although it had been more than 10 years since he came to the heavenly river continent, how many of the rulers had broken through to the half-saint realm? The once unreachable half-saint expert had actually become his servant now. No one would be able to accept such a change. Elder He also saw through Xiao Chen's thoughts. He smiled lightly and said, "Prospective Holy Son, in fact, there are two kinds of half-saint attendants in the ancient sacred sect. The first kind is those who still have hope of breaking through to the saint realm, and the second kind is those who have no hope of breaking through to the saint realm. Elder Master Bai and I have reached the age where we have no hope of breaking through to the saint realm. Therefore, in terms of status, although the two of us are half-saint attendants, we don't have any real power. Therefore, following the prospective Holy Son is undoubtedly the best choice for us." In the eyes of the higher-ups of the ancient sacred sect, half-saints who had no hope of breaking through to the saint realm were not very useful. Therefore, these half-saints would either become the servants of the prospective Holy Son, or be sent out to manage some of the ancient sacred sect's properties or guard some important cities. All of a sudden, he had two half-saint experts under his command. This was something that Xiao Chen would never have dared to imagine in the past. At the same time, it was not until now that Xiao Chen had personally experienced the terror of the chosen and the prospective chosen. In the Tianhe continent, once one became a Holy Son or prospective Holy Son, it meant that one would become a powerful figure in the Tianhe continent. Although they were of the younger generation, the Holy Son and prospective Holy Son had the power that no one dared to underestimate. This was also why the sect masters and emperors of many sects and empires would be extremely respectful when they saw the Holy Sons and prospective Holy Sons. This was not only because of their status, but also because of the power that these Holy Sons and prospective Holy Sons held. It was no exaggeration to say that with Xiao Chen's current status, even if he didn't go through the ancient sacred sect, it was not impossible for him to destroy the former Iron Sword sect with just a word. As for the Moonless Empire, he could even destroy it with a flip of his hand. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 737. In the blink of an eye, he had two half-sage bodyguards. Xiao Chun thoroughly felt the benefits of becoming a quasi-holy son. According to Elder He and Elder Master Bai, a quasi-holy son could have 2 half-sage bodyguards, while a holy son could have 4. In addition, a holy son could also have a holy servant, but a quasi-holy son couldn't. This was the difference between a quasi-holy son and a holy son. After chatting with the 2 elders for a long time, Xiao Chun finally accepted them. In fact, Xiao Chun didn't dislike Elder He and Elder Master Bai. In fact, Xiao Chun sincerely welcomed their arrival. Xiao Chun wasn't a hypocrite. Having 2 half-sage bodyguards by his side was absolutely beneficial to him. What reason did Xiao Chun have to refuse? Xiao Chun quickly accepted the 2 elders. He stood up and bowed to the 2 elders. Junior Xiao Chun would like to thank the 2 elders in advance. I'm afraid there will be many things that I'll need to trouble the 2 elders in the future. Although Elder He and Elder Master Bai were nominally his bodyguards, Xiao Chun didn't treat them as servants. This was also Xiao Chun's character. Xiao Chun didn't like too many rules. As long as he and the people around him did their job well, Xiao Chun hoped that they could be more casual with the rest of the time. Just like with Fei Mei and the other 3 girls, Xiao Chun never treated them as maids, let alone looked down on them. Seeing Xiao Chun's attitude, Elder Master Bai smiled slightly. Obviously, he also had a preliminary impression of Xiao Chun and Elder Master Bai. They were talented and approachable. He was very satisfied with Xiao Chun as his master. Elder He personally helped Xiao Chun up and said with a smile, "Quasi-holy son is too polite. From now on, we 2 old men will follow young master's lead." "Elder He, you're too polite. However, don't call me prospective saint anymore. Just call me young master," said Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun preferred to be addressed as young master by the 2 elders. Naturally, the 2 elders would not refuse and immediately addressed Xiao Chun as young master instead. With Elder Master Bai by his side, Xiao Chun was saved from a lot of trouble. The 2 elders were extremely familiar with the situation of the ancient sacred sect. Hence, with the 2 elders' introduction, Xiao Chun quickly understood the basic situation of the ancient sacred sect. As of now, Xiao Chun could be considered as the 5th candidate holy son of the ancient sacred sect. However, there was still one last thing that Xiao Chun needed to do, and that was to choose a holy palace. According to the 2 elders' explanation, there were a total of 4 holy palaces in the ancient sacred sect. All the disciples of the ancient sacred sect would be divided into the 4 holy palaces, and the masters of the 4 holy palaces would be the 4 holy sons of the ancient sacred sect. In other words, the 4 holy palaces were like countries within countries to the ancient sacred sect. Every holy palace was led by a holy son, and all the disciples who joined the holy palaces had to follow the rules of the holy palaces. As for the 4 holy palaces, the rules of each holy palace were different, and the 4 holy sons were free to decide. To the ancient sacred sect, the gate of life was only a framework. As for the other details, the 4 holy sons would decide on their own. It was exactly because of this that the 4 holy sons possessed endless authority. It was no exaggeration to say that basically all the saints in the ancient sacred sect did not care about anything. The 4 holy sons were the ones who truly held the power of life and death. Xiao Chun was now the 5th holy son candidate, so he had to choose a holy palace to join and become a holy son's right-hand man. Currently, the 4 holy sons each had a holy son as their assistant. No matter which holy palace Xiao Chun chose to join, it would mean that there would be 2 holy sons in that holy palace. After listening to the 2 elders' explanation, Xiao Chun sighed softly in the end. The 4 holy palaces, countries within countries? The ancient sacred sect really is unique. The management of the ancient sacred sect could be said to be the most unique that Xiao Chun had come into contact with so far. It was no exaggeration to say that the existence of the 4 holy palaces meant that all the disciples of the ancient sacred sect had been forcefully divided into 4 factions. They seemed to belong to the same sect, but there was actually a huge difference. This was because the rules of each holy palace were different. Some were strict, while others were lax. It all depended on the personality of the Holy Son who controlled the Holy Palace. Normally, the saints of the ancient sacred sect would not ask about the matters of the 4 holy palaces. It was precisely because of this that the relationship between the 4 holy palaces was not harmonious. There would be conflicts from time to time. Perhaps this was the saint's objective. After all, there would only be pressure when there was competition, and only with pressure would there be motivation. Competition between the disciples of the sect was not a bad thing. It was just that the ancient sacred sect had used the most direct method to show this. Next, he needed to choose a holy palace. As Shao Qin murmured, Elder Master Bai also spoke up. "You're right, young master. The 4 holy palaces are countries within countries to the ancient sacred sect, so you need to be careful when choosing a holy palace. As a Holy Son candidate, once you choose a holy palace, you'll be second only to one person. Things will become very troublesome if you encounter a Holy Son who doesn't suit you." That's right. The 4 holy palaces of the ancient sacred sect are currently controlled by the 4 holy sons. The 4 holy sons all have different personalities. If you choose a holy palace, the result will be different. You need to be careful, young master. Elder He also spoke up. After understanding the situation of the 4 holy palaces, Shao Qun had already made a decision in his heart. If Shao Qun had to choose one of the 4 holy sons, there was no need to hesitate too much. It was naturally Qin Yu. Putting aside the fact that Shao Qun knew Qin Yu, most importantly, he knew Qin Yu's personality very well. This guy could be said to be lazy to an extremely high level. Shao Qun believed that there would not be any conflicts if he were to be with such a holy son. Therefore, Shao Qun had already made up his mind to choose the holy palace that Qin Yu was in. Even though he had already made up his mind, Shao Qun still looked at Elder He and Elder Master Bai and asked, "I'm currently ranked 5th among the 5 holy sons of the ancient sacred sect. The holy sons have a ranking. Do the 2 elders know how the 4 holy sons are ranked?" The holy sons had a ranking. Shao Qun was currently ranked last, but Shao Qun had no idea how strong or weak the 4 holy sons were. Therefore, he asked. Elder Master Bai did not hide anything and replied truthfully after hearing Shao Qun's question. The 4 holy sons rarely fight, so it's very difficult for outsiders to know how strong they are now. However, according to the previous ranking, the weakest among the 4 holy sons should be Holy Son Jiangyu, followed by Holy Son Hu Fei, Holy Son Qingdi, and as for first place, it should be Holy Son Qin Yu. Qin Yu, Qingdi, Hu Fei, and Jiang Yu were the 4 holy sons of the ancient sacred sect. However, Shao Qun was momentarily stunned by Elder Master Bai's words. He looked at Elder Master Bai and asked in disbelief. "Elder Master Bai, are you sure? Qin Yu is the first holy son of the ancient sacred sect? Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 738. Qin Yu, the Qing Emperor, Hu Fei, and Jiang Yu were the 4 holy sons of the ancient hallowed sect. However, Shao Qun had never imagined that Qin Yu would actually be ranked first amongst the 4 of them. He was the first holy son of the ancient hallowed sect. Shao Qun wasn't unfamiliar with Qin Yu. Moreover, he had personally witnessed Hu Fei's battle. In Shao Qun's opinion, Hu Fei was clearly stronger than Qin Yu. However, Hu Fei was merely ranked 3rd amongst the 4 holy sons. Besides Qin Yu, there was still the Qing Emperor above him. Elder Master Bai quickly guessed something when he saw how Shao Qun doubted that Qin Yu was actually the first holy son, and he smiled bitterly and helplessly. "Looks like young master doesn't know Holy Son Qin Yu very well. Actually, what I said earlier wasn't very accurate. The rankings of the 4 holy sons have always been rather controversial, but it's all on the Qing Emperor, Hu Fei, and Jiang Yu. Only Holy Son Qin Yu has never been questioned." He's publicly acknowledged as the first Holy Son. The reason why young master has doubts is probably related to Holy Son Chen Yu's character. Ever since Holy Son Chen Yu became a Holy Son, he rarely took action. Furthermore, even if he was forcefully assigned some missions by the other saints, Holy Son Chen Yu would avoid them as much as he could. If he really couldn't avoid them, he would only do it half-heartedly. However, even though Holy Son Chen Yu's character is like that, there's no need to doubt his strength. In the past, Holy Son Chen Yu went out on a mission. Supposedly, he flew into a rage for certain reasons. In the end, he killed 23 Dao emperors and heavily injured 2 half-saints in a single battle. After that battle, Holy Son Chen Yu's strength received everyone's acknowledgement. Elder Master Bai spoke slowly. Xiao Chen shook his head and smiled. I do understand Holy Son Chen Yu's character, but I really never imagined that he would actually be the first Holy Son. Chen Yu was the first Holy Son of the ancient Saint sect. This was something that Xiao Chen had not expected. However, this did not matter. Regardless of whether Chen Yu was the first Holy Son or not, Xiao Chen was prepared to choose Chen Yu's Holy Palace, which was the first Holy Palace. Having made his decision, Xiao Chen chose the first sacred palace, Chen Yu's first sacred palace, early the next morning. When Xiao Chen made his choice, the disciples of the first sacred palace had already come to greet him. The entire ancient sacred sect was divided into 5 regions. Apart from the central shrines and the myriad world palace, which were directly under the jurisdiction of the saints, the other 4 regions were where the 4 sacred palaces were located. Disciples of different sacred palaces were not allowed to enter other sacred palaces at will. Therefore, after Xiao Chen chose the first sacred palace, a single word appeared on his identity token, indicating that Xiao Chen was a disciple of the first sacred palace. Under the lead of the 2 disciples of the first sacred palace, Xiao Chen, Elder He, and Elder Master Bai arrived at the first sacred palace, which was located in the east of the ancient sacred sect. There were rune matrices all around, and there was only one entrance. Xiao Chen entered the first sacred palace through the entrance. There were houses floating in the air all around, and there were 3 caves at the center. One of them was the largest, and that was where Chen Yu lived. There were 2 smaller caves to the left and right of Chen Yu's residence. One of them was where Xiao Chen would live in the future, and the other was where the other candidate of the first sacred palace lived. Along the way, the 2 disciples respectfully introduced the situation of the first sacred palace to Xiao Chen. According to them, there were a total of 2,498 disciples in the first sacred palace, including 5 direct disciples and 18 half-saint attendants. Of course, the 18 half-saint attendants were not like Elder He and Elder Master Bai. After all, Elder He and Elder Master Bai were now under Xiao Chen's personal command. They only obeyed Xiao Chen's orders. Even Chen Yu could not order them to do anything. In addition to these personnel, the first sacred palace also had the law enforcement hall, mission hall, martial skills hall, and various cultivation grounds. All the matters of the first sacred palace had always been handled by the 4th candidate, Du Yi. In this regard, Xiao Chen did not find it strange. After all, with Chen Yu's character, it would be strange if he personally took charge of the first sacred palace. He must have handed over everything to others and left it to others. Speaking of Du Yi, he was ranked 4th among the 5 candidates of the ancient sacred sect. Before Xiao Chen appeared, Du Yi was at the bottom. Even so, Du Yi did not feel the slightest shame. On the contrary, Du Yi was like a fish in water in the first sacred palace. Chen Yu found it troublesome and left everything to Du Yi to handle. Over time, Du Yi naturally became the true ruler of the first sacred palace. Although everything depended on Chen Yu's mood, it was undeniable that Du Yi did his best, and he enjoyed this feeling very much. However, now that Xiao Chen had arrived and was also a candidate, Xiao Chen's appearance undoubtedly made Du Yi feel threatened. What was certain was that Xiao Chen's arrival meant that he would definitely take away power from Du Yi. This was something that Du Yi would not allow. Because of this, while Xiao Chen was heading to Du Yi's cave dwelling, several of Du Yi's confidants were gathered in Du Yi's cave dwelling. Du Yi sat on the main seat and looked indifferently at the 5 people below. These 5 people were all direct disciples of the first sacred palace. Du Yi said in a slightly cold tone, "Xiao Chen has chosen the first sacred palace. Tell me, how should we deal with him?" Hearing Du Yi's words, a direct disciple said respectfully, "Senior brother Du Yi, although Xiao Chen became the candidate by luck, it is undeniable that once he comes to our first sacred palace, Senior brother Chen, you will definitely give some power to Xiao Chen." Xiao Chen's intention to give power was inevitable. Hearing this direct disciple's words, Du Yi's eyes flashed coldly. "Want power? He's dreaming. I want to see if Xiao Chen knows how to appreciate kindness. If he doesn't know what's good for him, I don't mind teaching him a lesson." Du Yi was definitely unwilling to hand over power to others, but Chen Yu's decision was something that Du Yi could not control. Moreover, although Chen Yu had a lazy personality, it did not mean that he was a fool. On the contrary, Chen Yu was a very smart person. He knew everything about the first sacred palace. Previously, Du Yi had controlled all the power in the first sacred palace, but Du Yi's management was very orderly. Apart from nepotism and forming cliques, there were no major mistakes. Therefore, Du Yi had always turned a blind eye. But now, with Xiao Chen's arrival, if Chen Yu wanted to give him power, Du Yi could do nothing about it. Since he did not dare to offend Chen Yu, he could only let Xiao Chen know the difficulty and back off. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 739. He would never allow anyone to seize power from him. Du Yi was used to being the moon surrounded by the stars. He would never allow anyone to seize power from his hands. The coldness in Du Yi's eyes grew thicker. Seemingly unconcerned, he asked, "Prepare for the worst. What do you think the sun will do if he really wants to give Xiao Chen power?" This. Upon hearing Du Yi's words, the 5 personal disciples hesitated for a moment. After a few moments, one of them mustered up the courage to speak. "The first sacred palace has the Law Enforcement Hall, Mission Hall, Martial Skills Hall, 8 sacred cultivation grounds, and other facilities. Every place needs to be managed by someone. However, there are only 2 places with the most authority: the Law Enforcement Hall and the Martial Skills Hall. Senior brother Du Yi, in my opinion, apart from the Law Enforcement Hall and the Martial Skills Hall, if Sir Holy Sun gives Xiao Chen some power, we don't have to become enemies with him. Anyway, those places are just some uncut stones, so there's no harm in giving him some benefits. In the entire first sacred palace, there were only 2 places with the most authority: the Law Enforcement Hall and the Martial Skills Hall. Among them, the Martial Skills Hall had the most authority. After all, the Martial Skills Hall was in charge of the punishments and rewards of the entire first sacred palace. Du Yi nodded when he heard the personal disciple's words. "You're right. Let's see how the chosen one decides. Of course, if Xiao Chen knows what's good for him, I won't mind giving him some benefit. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless." The Law Enforcement Hall and the Martial Skills Hall were Du Yi's route. He would never allow anyone to meddle with them, especially the Law Enforcement Hall. As for the other places, he could give Xiao Chen some benefit. Xiao Chen was naturally unaware of Du Yi's matters. Under the lead of the 2 disciples, Xiao Chen had arrived at Chen Yu's residence. As for Elder He and Elder Master Bai, they returned to their cave abodes to pack up. After all, from today onward, Xiao Chen would be living and cultivating in the first sacred palace. Isu was already waiting at the entrance of Chen Yu's cave abode. The 2 disciples greeted her respectfully. "Senior sister Isu." Even though Isu was only Chen Yu's holy servant, even Du Yi didn't dare to offend her in the first sacred palace. Isu nodded slightly and smiled at Xiao Chen. It wasn't their first meeting, so they weren't unfamiliar with each other. "Brother Xiaochen, let's go. The sun is already waiting for you," Yisu said with a smile. Under Yisu's lead, Xiaochen walked into Chen Yu's cave residence. What was this cave residence? It was actually somewhat similar to an independent space. However, compared to an independent space, the cave residence was much simpler and the area inside was much smaller. Xiaochen entered Chen Yu's cave residence through an entrance. It was an independent space. The area was not large, but it was very beautiful. Furthermore, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth here was much richer than the outside world. It was really a treasure land. Xiaochen was attracted to the cave abode for the first time. It was no wonder. After all, it was difficult to build a cave abode. Only saints had the ability to build a cave abode. In the entire ancient sacred sect, only the saints, holy sons, and prospective holy sons were qualified to own a cave abode. Even half-saints weren't qualified to own one. Of course, Xiaochen was now a prospective holy son, so his cave abode couldn't be compared to Chen Yu's. The cave abode was full of birds and fragrant flowers. There were some houses scattered around. There was also a small stream and a lake. From time to time, one could hear a few birds chirping. Following Yisu, Xiaochen came all the way to a small stream. From afar, he saw Chen Yu lying lazily on a recliner with a fishing rod in his hand. He looked like a fisherman who had nothing to do. His eyes were closed as if he had fallen asleep. However, with Xiaochen's arrival, Chen Yu slowly opened his eyes and smiled. Just like before, he greeted Xiaochen warmly. "Haha, junior brother Xiaochen, I told you. You would definitely choose my first sacred palace." It was as if he already knew what Xiaochen would choose. Hearing this, Xiaochen smiled and replied, "Where else can I go other than here, senior brother?" Haha. Hearing Xiaochen's words, Chen Yu laughed heartily. He then asked Yisu to bring over a recliner and sat beside Xiaochen by the stream. The two of them sat side by side. Chen Yu smiled lazily and said, "I already had a feeling when we parted in Wind City. I just didn't expect it to be so fast. Senior brother Xiaochen is really surprising." Chen Yu knew that Xiaochen would enter the ancient sacred sect sooner or later. Moreover, Chen Yu also believed that with Xiaochen's talent, it was only a matter of time before he became a chosen of the ancient sacred sect. However, what Chen Yu did not expect was that Xiaochen would enter the ancient saint sect so quickly and even become a candidate holy son. This made Chen Yu very surprised. Hearing Chen Yu's words, Xiaochen smiled and said, "Senior brother, are you making fun of me? Now that I'm your disciple, I hope senior brother can take care of me in the future." Since they were already brothers of the same sect, Xiaochen naturally addressed himself as a junior brother. Chen Yu laughed and waved his hand. "Haha, don't joke around, junior brother. It's not like you don't know my character. Instead of saying that I'm taking care of you, it's better to say that I'm thanking you for coming to help me. This first sacred palace is too big for me to handle." Chen Yu also naturally acknowledged Xiaochen's identity as his junior brother. As they chatted, Chen Yu also naturally mentioned the purpose of asking Xiaochen to come today. It was to manage the matters of the first sacred palace. Given Chen Yu's character, he naturally didn't want to bother with these troublesome matters. Previously, because he had no choice, Chen Yu had given all the authority to do it. However, now that Xiaochen was here, Chen Yu naturally had to give some authority to Xiaochen. Moreover, Chen Yu had been increasingly dissatisfied with Du Yi for a long time. After being in charge for so long, the first sacred palace had almost become Du Yi's sole authority. If it weren't for the fact that Du Yi was smart and didn't make any outrageous mistakes, coupled with Chen Yu's character, Du Yi would have been removed by Chen Yu long ago. Now, Xiaochen's arrival had really helped Chen Yu a lot. In fact, Chen Yu had already expected this day to come when Xiaochen's coronation ceremony was held. Therefore, after speaking, Chen Yu put away the laziness on his face, which was rare for him. His eyes flickered with a faint light as he said seriously, "Junior brother, this time you've come to the first sacred palace. I plan to let you take charge of the law enforcement hall and all the punishments in the first sacred palace. What do you think? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.